Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Challenger Series hosted by Wisdom Gaming and giantslayer. This is a really awesome event because this is where the top TFT players will compete against each other to get a chance to play in the Riot qualifiers. But before we get a little bit more into the tournament, I've got a little special someone with me. Actually, the second lawyer you've all seen here on the Challenger Series so far. We've got BryanG coming over from the card game world now into TFT. You were saying that you're set for specialists a little bit. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself for the people seeing you for the first time?
Do we want to call it specialist or limited experience? Yeah, I only found TFT in the past few months, but fell deeply in love with the game. Have been playing basically nonstop since I discovered it. And unfortunately, I think I've exposed our secret plot as lawyers. We're all actually coming to infiltrate the esports space. Like, we've had a meeting, we got together, we said we're done with this law stuff. The real future of this business is in esports, and we're all coming for your jobs, just so you know.
Yeah, Bryce and Brian, the cobble of law, lawyer enforcement here in TFT. But enough about us and more about the players that we're going to see today. We have a pretty stacked lobby through and through. So starting things off, we've got Noster, we got pockygom, Sphinx, DQA, Cottontail, ramblinnn, and Kurumx. So full disclosure, everybody, I'm pretty sure it's Purrier, but my mouth just messes up every time I say it. So we're probably going to hear a couple different versions of that name as time goes on. And before we talk a little bit more about the players, let's also see what the players are competing for and how we get to the Riot World Championship. So we're seeing it right here. So we've got the Fates qualifiers. You see there are some by us, some by some other companies, and that's going to go into the qualifier 1 through 4 into the Fates North American Regional Finals. So if you want to be able to make it to the North American Regional Finals, this is how you are supposed to do it. And now that we've got through that housekeeping, Brian, let's go ahead and talk about some of our players and how we win what we're playing for, which is that qualifying spot for the North American Regional Finals. But how do we win here? It can be a little complicated, but let me walk you through it. So first, you have to get to 24 points. Players must first achieve 24 points and then win a lobby or earn 40 points total. First place wins $200 and an invite to the next set for NA qualifier. And so what that means, friends, is that you have to get to 24 points and then win a lobby. So you can kind of do whatever you want for those 24 points at first. You hit 24, you win your lobby, you're good to go. You hit 40 points and no one else has won a lobby. That person who's won 40 points is going to win the qualifier. But boop, what if someone hits 40 points and wins a lobby at the same time? The tiebreaker for us here is that whoever wins that lobby will overcome or supersede the decision of that 40 points. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we move on through the tournament. But Bryan, what are you excited about in terms of what you're going to see today?
Yeah, so obviously the meta has moved to a place where there's a lot of focus on these reroll chosens. And that's all well and good. I think those will certainly determine a share of games. But what I really want to see is where people find space to get creative when things don't go their way, when they don't find those reroll chosens early, where they kind of have their plans derailed. Are there some other secret OP carries out there? We know mostly the carries are coming out of the 4-drop slot. Kale is the big focus once you get to 4 cost. Is there someone else out there who can maybe break open a lobby? I have my eye on Morgana, to be honest with you. I've played so much Morgana in this set, and I think there is carry potential there. Certainly the pieces have to come together, but I'm curious if these players have any other secret OP stuff they really want to break out as we go through this tournament.
And if you guys need any type of support for what Bryan is talking about, if you go to his Twitter, you'll see that over the last 16 games, I believe there is nothing less than top 4. So this is the real deal here with BryanG as we start off with pockygom. So in the early game, what are these players kind of looking at? I know when it comes to the chosen mechanics, sometimes it's the items driving the force, sometimes it's the champ. But here in the early game, what are you specifically looking for to map out your play?
Yeah, I really like to let the items dictate my path first. If I'm looking to set up my early game and not being driven by my chosen, then they're going to kind of tell the story of the direction I'm looking to go. But of course, there's times where you just go in that shop and there's the Yasuo or there's the Diana, and you're going to let that dictate how you play. And so many of these 1-cost reroll champions do such a good job of being item diverse. Particularly Diana does a really great job. And there we see our first chosen in the shop. It's a divine Wukong. Pockygom's going to have to debate that one.
Divine did go through a couple changes before where you're going to be Divine a little less often, but once you do enter your Divine status, you are going to clear all of your CC and get all of the value of those Divine buffs. So we do end up picking up that Divine Chosen really early on. And so, Bryan, when you pick up an early Chosen, what does that kind of lock you into in terms of the next 4 to 5 rounds?
Well, it really depends. I think especially with Wukong, there's kind of a few ways to play this. Wukong can be a very fine bridge to the late game, particularly those Kale comps we mentioned. I really like itemizing Wukong just like I would a Kale and then eventually transitioning. Or, and this is something that only really I feel has gained popularity over the past week or so, you could just go all in on that Wukong. Set up maybe a Bonky Kong situation and do a little reroll, 3-star your Wukong nice and early and use that to carry the lobby. So it'll be interesting to see which direction Pocky wants to go with that.
I love me some Bonky Kong, to be completely honest with you.
Such a fun comp.
And you're right. Like, it can totally bring you into that late game, and it's one of the easier transitions into that Kale Executioner Divine comp, because you kind of do need the second Divine to keep Kale alive, or else she's going to fall apart like tissue paper once she gets aggressed upon in the back line. And we actually are starting to get some good Kale items, especially with that bow, right? You need 3 bows for best in slot items for Kale. So seeing what you're seeing right now, right? We got some sharpshooters. We actually have a ton of money on the bench right now. What is Pockygom? What do you assume he's thinking about in these first initial rounds now that we have a chosen, we've got a bunch of money on the bench, but we're choosing not to hit 10 gold right now?
Yeah, I think it's always a debate, right? Do you want to push your economy, or do you want to keep open your options by holding this really wide bench? And of course, you see the Divine units are already here. We could go up to 4 Divine if we wanted to with Aurelia, with Nasus. So the pieces are in place to really lean hard into that synergy. Also, 5 Wukongs already. So a lot of things shaping up well through this early game for Pocky.
Yeah, and so we already have the Chosen, and that's one of the things about the Chosen mechanic. It's 3 copies of that champ, so that's why you're seeing legendary units, 4-cost units getting golden or getting to tier 3. It's because you're getting those 3 with those Chosen, and you only need 6 more, and this Wukong is a definite example of what more you need to get there. And the best part about all of this is that if you're going to build a Bonky Kong comp, this is a very good start for you. Like you said, you've got the Divine already, and so when you need that Divine 4 to be there, you can put your Aurelia, you can put your Nasus in there, or you can go the sharpshooter way. And even just by the way his bench looks right now, he's obviously got 2 diverging ideas. Usually the right side of the bench is where players put chance that they might sell. The left side is usually a chance that they're probably going to keep. Would you say that's kind of an accurate read for our current situation?
I think that is the case. You see Vlad kind of floating out to the right there. People who have played a lot of TFT with me, especially in the set, know that I love Vlad. Just love him as a champion. I think he brings so much of a strategic angle to your early game where even if you're not building around Vlad, you can just set up really interesting scenarios where Vlad is really empowering your carries to go ahead and get you those early wins that are so important for both saving the HP and also getting your economy rolling. So we are at 10 gold now. We see Pocky has been able to get to that threshold. Going to get a little interest on this go around, and the Divine Comp really coming together nicely here.
Yeah, and the thing about Vlad that I love what you said is that like he's a support unit, right? You can build him with some damage. Yeah, it's fun to put a Hextech Gunblade or something on him or a Jeweled Gauntlet, but he's really there for everyone else around him. He's there for the kumbaya. He might be a cultist, you know, the aesthetic might not match, but he definitely wants to help his team. And if he gets one ult off, it's actually pretty crazy how much of an advantage you can give yourself, especially with some other tankier units with that extra life pool. But now we've got to get this Bonky Kong going, or we're going to keep these item components separate. The other idea is maybe we don't want a Last Whisper and we keep one of those away for now. The Last Whisper, all right item for Kale, right?
All right. It's certainly not optimal. I tend to build Last Whisper situationally more than I actually look to build it. But if you have to work with it, you certainly can. I think you're right that the preference would be to keep those items apart if we can.
All right, and so now that we're kind of seeing what pockygom is going to, it really looks like a Bonky Kong comp, which is always going to be pretty strong in the early game, utilizing that divine buff pretty easily with your vanguards. And now that we're here on the first carousel, this is kind of like when the game starts to really come out, right? Decisions have been made on where we're going, and I'm really intrigued as to where DQA and Sphinx are actually going to end up. So if you were to ask me two people that I'm looking out for today's tournament, and we talked about this before we came on air today, is Sphinx and DQA. DQA, one of the most well-known early game starters, feast or famine player. Last week started with 2 wins, I believe, and then did not qualify. Sphinx is someone that I've been following for over a year now and has done a lot of work, and winning something like this would be a coronation of sorts into the tier 1 TFT community. But Sphinx, one thing about Sphinx that can definitely get in his head a little bit is exactly that, is his head. Right now we're running some brawlers with a nice little carry Kindred in the backline. I believe Kindred has some of the highest base damage in the entire game, especially amongst 3-cost units. And with these items, this Kindred's actually going to be doing quite a bit of work. Probably the reason why he won that last round.
Yeah, Kindred, you don't really need to invest a lot of resources to get a lot of return out of Kindred. You can see not really supported by this comp at all, but just throw a couple items on there, you're good to go.
I love Kindred. What a cool design for a character, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
I know, right? Sphinx now going to be going up against some duelists and one of the scarier tier 1 units, 2 of them actually, Yasuo and Nidalee, into that back line. But you're already seeing that base damage from that Kindred do absolute carnage to a lot of those units. But now we're getting to the beefier units. It's looking pretty good, especially with that Runaan's. Runaan's an item for a very specific person. Brian, what do you think these items are going to be going to? It's also looking moderately Kaylee.
It also looks Kaylee. I think that's a really good assessment. But here's another unit that really uses Runaan's very well. It's Shyvana. And I think these are excellent Shyvana items. We're already up to 4 brawlers as well. Shyvana uses all parts of the brawler buffalo really well. Benefits from that extra health, benefits from the extra AD. So this looks like quite a promising start to a maybe 8 brawler run.
I mean, 8 brawler is probably one of the easier reach comps to hit because all you need is set and and a brawler chosen. So if you guys are like a beginner and you're like, hey, I'm having a hard time in the late game, what's something that I can kind of focus on and get there into that top 4? An 8 brawler comp is definitely one of the more simple situations that you can find yourself in. And I love the Runaan's and the RFC. So the RFC is going to make sure that everything is going to hit. And that magic burn for Shyvana is actually... I mean,
look at that damage output. It was so easy for Shyvana to just drop 3,000 damage like nothing.
Like nothing. Literally like nothing. And so... you know, at this point, it's just going to be emotional damage from Shyvana, is whatever extra damage she's going to be putting on it. Because I know
We've all taken it.
I know, either on the opposite side or when Shyvana just yeets herself into the team.
Right.
and then just gets taken out. And so if you're Sphinx, right, what items are we kind of looking for right now? We got moderately best in slot, arguably best in slot for Shyvana. What are some components we're hoping these cards give us?
Yeah, I think you want some kind of defensive item, and it doesn't have to be a hard defensive item. It could certainly be Hodge. I think a Hand of Justice would be completely acceptable on the Shyvana here. Or maybe you want to look at something like a GA. That's another item I've really appreciated on my Shyvanas. Of course, there's, Quicksilver, always an option, but Shyvana kind of has her own built-in protection. You usually don't have to go that route. I think the best case would be putting together a Hodge here and just going really hard offense from the Shyvana.
And so we are in the bottom 4 right now, but something that I definitely want to put your eye towards is the bottom side of this leaderboard with Purire and DQA, who, before we talked about today, I was like, if they're not in first, they're in 8th, right? That is exactly what's happening today. DQA also very low HP-wise, would you say?
Yeah, a really devastating early game for DQA. And I don't know if you caught that, but I just saw under pockygom's name, we made the 3-star Wukong. So that is already complete at 3-1 pretty early. Certainly you see it happen earlier than that occasionally, but a nice start if you're looking to Bonky Kong.
And I'm wondering if Sphinx is going to try to re-roll at 3-2. That's something that happens sometimes if you're trying to do one of your re-roll comps. That's like the last bastion of, I got to get my Nidalee, I got to get my Tristana, for example. But we're going to be pushing these Dragon Souls for a while. These brawlers are looking pretty strong for being just tier 1 still.
Yeah, I think he's in a fine place and can take some time, maybe instead choose to spend some resources later on in the game to try and 3-star that Shyvana when Shyvana goes absolutely bonkers at that point once she hits that 3-star level.
Yeah, dude, that the amount of HP you get, and if you really want to lose some LP, put a mage hat on her. So we're over on a DQA right now, and this is not looking good, to be completely honest with you. So we do have the Zeeks that is required for a Zed comp, not for the Zed, but to, kind of hold hands with the Zed, another Kumbaya moment. But we need way more bows. And the very interesting thing about this is you build Zed very similar to Kale in a way, but the Zed is going to happen a lot earlier. And when you're chosen is getting destroyed by, a general Wukong, right? Maybe not destroyed, but did not fully take advantage of this round. Thank goodness for the support around him. DQA finally gets a round win thanks to that Zeeks. But we also have a Thieves Club potential. We've got a potential Last Whisper IE situation as well, but we really, really want some bows.
Yeah, I think the big difference between something like Zed and something like Kale, besides obviously the timing, is just a hard reliance from Zed on having that rapid fire cannon. I think it's so critical for him to be able to stay safe, to be able to do consistent damage, and the Zeeks as well is certainly an important part of the kit. But until the rapid fire cannon comes online, Zed has some real problems and can just get blown up in fights. So it's going to be a critical time on the carousel for DQA. But in last place, going to get first pick, you certainly have to hope there's a bow out there.
Inting for Carousel, or, as my friends and I say, playing Fortune without having Fortune for DQA right now. But we did win that last round. Are we going to be able to continue on our win streak? And look at the CC on that Vi, unable to ult even one time, even with that Rabadon's death cap. And that's just wasted stats there. And I think a good amount of CC on the carry of Cottontail is going to bring DQA another victory. This is giving me some Asian gamer vibes when it comes to playing Zed, where you kind of just... you nosedive to the bottom of the leaderboard, you hit your Zed, and then you get top 4. Yeah,
it's a very valid strategy when you need those. Oh, look at that, though. Cottontail able to snipe away that bow from DQA.
That is very unfortunate, especially with just one bow for that Zed. Basically, I would, sometimes I say what you see on the right side can sometimes be a mirage in terms of who actually has the strongest comp at any given time, especially around right now when people on the bottom side of the leaderboard invest a lot of money and become much stronger. And I think we're actually starting to see that a little bit. And we should start seeing that a little bit because the panic will start setting in at around 4-1 if you don't have a plan yet.
No, I think that's exactly right. And it wasn't a complete disaster for DQA. Cloak was an important part of the strategy as well. There you see, going to get a little bit of protection for that Zed with the QSS. But like I said, that rapid fire cannon has to be completed at some point very soon.
And
pretty aggressive roll here too.
Yeah, that's very DQA, by the way. So DQA, I think the way that you describe his play is aggressive, is no holds barred. It's investing in yourself, if you will. And DQA also only 17 years old, everyone, at home. 17 years old and already at the peak literally of the world on TFT, #1 in the whole world right now, according to his Twitter and the snapshot. So DQA now trying to back up that, claim with a good qualifier. And what's really interesting, and I want to bring this up again, is this player won 1 or 2 lobbies and then didn't get anything over 7th and 8th last week, right? So when it comes to streaky, when it comes to being inconsistent, if DQA doesn't start out on top, I personally worry about him. You haven't gotten a chance to see a lot of that, tournament play specifically, but just based on what you're seeing right here, the vibe I'm getting is pretty similar. Still pretty aggressive, still aggressively rolling, and we're still not getting set.
Yeah, I think one of the things, though, is that you just have to have confidence in your game plan. You've chosen to play this style. You need to lean into it if you're DQA and just commit. And he's doing so. And I think things are starting to break a little bit unfavorably. And at this point, you really want to have some Zeds together. And they just aren't in the shops for DQA.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that we actually haven't really seen outside from pockygom is a reroll conf. And so in terms of tier 3 units, the only thing that we've seen so far is the Bonky Kong. And look at who's on top of the leaderboard right now. That should tell you something.
Yeah, really interesting situation developing here for Cottontail. In last place, only 42 HP, but 3 fortune and now a 7 losing streak, it looks like. Wait. Set tried to interject, but now 7 games lost in a row. Is Cottontail going to be able to find that W to put together a huge fortune payout?
Huge fortune payout. That's going to be at least 50 gold. That might end up being like the 4 Thief's Gloves situation. Fortune payout's one of the most enthralling things in all of TFT right now. There's something so great about just seeing all those, lanterns pop up, getting all that gold. But the thing here that you're seeing right now is, and Brian, you can tell me if my read on it might be a little off, but usually fortune players want to win by now, right? At 3-7.
Oh yeah, we're pushing it at this point, but you're pot committed. You just can't get away from this situation if you're Cottontail. This is the only way you find any kind of good result in this lobby is to hit this fortune payout. So you have to just spend aggressively and try and find the units that can carry you to that one victory and then quickly rebuild your comp from there.
Mm-hmm. Usually, if you haven't won a fortune game by 4-3, it's just not going to happen. And we're getting very, very close. And I mean, you noticed 0 gold. You want to spend all your money at like 3-7 or 3-6 and try to win before 4-1, so you can move into 4-1 at level 7 with some 4-cost things, and you can change your chosen. But we're going to keep with the brawler chosen for now, especially since we already have the set.
Yeah, nice items on the set.
Yeah, it's going to be up against Bonky Kong, and if this set ults the Wukong, which he does not, that's going to be a lot more damage, but that Hextech Gunblade going to be keeping him alive for a good long while. This is going to be a slower round than usual. We got some beefy boys on the field, but this should be another loss for Cottontail.
It does look like it. Hextech Gunblade on set is weird, because certainly it provides a nice boost, but also you miss out on some sit-up time, which I think is important to getting the full value out of Set. You kind of want him on the bench while the rest of your team is still alive. And there you saw Set really didn't get any time to do sit-ups and recover that health.
Oh, man. More sit-up time. I tell myself that literally every day.
Oh, we all need more sit-up time.
And I have not done a single sit-up in 2021 so far. So consistency is key, friends. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back to the game. Brian, you were saying that, you've gone through the whole quarantine roller coaster. I think Fortune is kind of the same thing, right?
Oh,
it's up and down emotionally.
Yeah. I would say Fortune is the quarantine of TFT comps, without a doubt. It just pulls you in and can kind of take over your life and doesn't let you go. It just hangs on forever, and it could just torpedo all the plans you might have had for a game.
Fortune Jail, the last place you want to be in TFT, and we're going to continue being in Fortune Jail. This is actually looking like a potential fast 8th because of Fortune Jail. DQA also losing, probably not getting enough Zeds, and we're getting to a point where the levels are not going to be friendly to DQA either when it comes to those roles. And the other thing about Cottontail as we move back here is 20 gold for him at this point was actually a lot based on what he did at 3-6, but we still haven't yet gotten stronger. Now we have to make some choices. This is how you win through fortune, is to give it up, apparently.
Yeah, we're picking up some good units here, but I just don't see any coherent team comp coming together. And based on what we've seen from other players in the lobby, I don't think this is going to be enough to pull out that W.
I don't think so either, but it would be great to be pleasantly surprised. A 9-loss cash out is something that we have not really ever seen, and we do get that initial ult, and almost no one takes damage because of the keepers. We're going to go ahead and do some ab workouts now off to the side. This Lulu should be able to give that set enough time to completely get back his health, do some true damage on the way back, and this is looking like it's going to be a payout. All we need to do is keep that set alive. Here we go, friends. We're going to get a 9-loss payout, but this is the thing. When you have 10 HP, you still might get countered on your next round, right?
Yeah.
So it is not over just yet.
An incredibly high pressure turn coming up for Cottontail. You just basically have to put together an entire team comp on the fly, figure out what you want to do, distribute all those items, distribute all that gold all over the place. And this is it. We're going to see Cottontail's fate determined by this next turn.
And, you know, people always meme about, you don't need APM in TFT on a 9-loss fortune. You potentially might actually need to get going when it comes to that APM and clicking those keys. And it's very important at this point to be intentional. You should be thinking about like the different permutations of what could happen with your fortune payout at this point.
Yeah, this is where my fortune comps go to die, because I have those old man APMs and just can't get it done ever.
I get it. Yep, 100%. And a Lucky Lantern on the same round. We're going to get 2 Thief's Gloves and about 3 Thief's Gloves and about 30 gold. And now we're going to have to switch all of our units out, right? We got a second set. The reason why he kept the Lucky Lantern up there is now he can react to what he has instead. We actually have a loaded dice, so we could put that on set, and that's going to bring set, I believe, because it's only going to get the boss. So we can load a dice that set. We're going to go ahead and put Thief's Gloves on most people. We sell that set to get the Rabadons instead as we move over to an Elderwood composition that we didn't get 6 Elderwood in. And that's what I mean by that APM, Brian.
Yeah, and you see like there was a cup that didn't give any benefit. And look, the team is just getting shredded now, and you feel so bad for Cottontail. I think the corner really was turned. I'm not sure he's going to survive this fight. And that is going to do it for Cottontail. Nice. Such a shame after that 9 fortune payout.
3 Thief's Gloves, you know, is so good sometimes, right? Really depends on those rolls. But once you get that payout, you got to get going. And we just ran out of time. And when you're in a situation like this is a big tournament, right? You got to keep your nerves under check as we get a collector for a Sivir there. And one of our first Ornn items, which, you know, the power level for those are very wide, in my opinion. This one is like, in my opinion, okay. I think the one that's like, I forget what it's called. The one that's like, if you attack, they get frozen, is the best one.
I agree with that assessment. I think the Trinity Force is also quite good, although nerfed from where it was at the start.
It's a good like consolation item if you can't find those stats for your Kales and stuff like that, or for your like secondary or tertiary carry like a Yasuo, for example. As we have a high roll duelist comp for Perur on his side, and it's gonna actually get blown up. Insane. Where did that damage come from? I believe it was Aatrox with the jewel.
I think it was Aatrox too. And if you remember what I mentioned in the pregame, what new carries can we find in this metagame that's supposed to be being defined by the reroll comps? Here you see an Aatrox doing its thing, and I've heard some rumblings. I've heard it said that Aatrox really can fill this carry role. So it'll be interesting to see how Noster does with Aatrox in the position of being the main damage dealer, I think, for the team. I would love to see the damage graph on that.
I know, right? We don't really ever see that. I think I've seen it once when I was casting Fight Night Rising. It was just a Jeweled Gauntlet. But the Jeweled Gauntlet with the Giant Slayer is so smart because if you take a look at the rest of the lobby, there's a lot of beefy boys and girls there.
Yes, there are. Yeah. Giant Slayer in general, I think is such a good item right now, given how many 3-star units are in the game.
Do you think it's slammable?
It's hard to say. I mean, like, obviously the benefit isn't there in the early game, but you know you're going to get paid late. And I waver back and forth, honestly. And I'm curious to see how players deal with that question today.
Yeah, as we're now getting our Vanguard front line. So we have 5 Vanguards. We're only missing 1 more, but I think the big difference, if you're kind of coming in new and you haven't played in a bit, Vanguard has gotten magic resist now as well. So, and Brawlers have gotten extra damage as well through their extra health. So that's why these kind of tankier comps have been very successful. That's also why you're actually not really seeing things like QSS a lot, because even here, right, there's not a ton of CC outside of that Aatrox and that Ornn, but look at that Aatrox. That Jeweled Gauntlet is about to pop off one more time and is going to blow them all up.
Look at that damage.
Huge stuff. Let's go ahead and look at the damage chart. 6,300, 6,400 pretty much.
This is a fascinating comp being played by Noster right now. Really just a mishmash of various strong units and strong traits and making it into something that looks pretty special right now.
And it's actually, what's really interesting is a lot of our reroll comps struggling right now. Pockygom rerolled Wukong in 5th place, had a 40 HP advantage at one point, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of our reroll comps actually starting to struggle with some of these beefier comps right now, because I think there's a point where defensive stats just like barely crest that tier 3 1 cost unit value, right? Especially on units like Tristana and Wukong specifically.
Yeah, look at the quality of units. Oh, missed on the timing for the Zephyr.
That's huge. But what were you saying, Brian?
Look at the quality of the units that Noster started to put together, and you know you're asking your Bonky Kong to handle 2-star Swain, 2-star Yone. At some point, there's just a quality difference between the units you're putting out there.
Noster, pretty well known in the community. It plays a lot with Goobums, if that's a name that is familiar, and DQA, I believe, and they all like trained up each other on the last set 4 qualifier, and none of them won. So hopefully this time around they'll be able to get that group mentality forward. But we have 2 5-cost tier 2 units right now, and that death stance on Swain is terrifying.
Yeah, Swain is such an odd unit to me. I've had such positive experiences and such negative experiences with Swain. I think he's, again, a very feast or famine type unit, but you get the right itemization on your Swain and it could definitely carry you very hard.
You get your like Warmogs and a Vanguard stat, right? That stuff is insane. And look at also, you know, something in the game that's never really been a thing is tanky units with damage, and that's exactly what we're seeing on both sides. And actually, the Swain should do quite well against the Shyvana, as that Death Stance does find a lot of value. Not a lot of damage on that Swain, but a lot of probably tanking from that Swain, as this lobby has gotten really close. And, you know, we were talking before, these games, especially on a new set, are going to go quicker, and we're going to reach this NPC round with possibly 3 eliminations by 6-1. This game's not reaching round 7. It's just not going to happen.
No, a very accelerated pace going right now. It's so interesting to me, Yone's role in this comp. No synergies, just kind of out there on his own as a 2-cost. But again, the large bodies of the opposing teams. Yone does so much shred, that 60% now reduction in both MR and armor, enabling the Aatrox to punch through the Swain to deal the extended damage, and even the A-Soul to pop off. No items on that A-Soul, but still able to get the job done. That's a unit that has certainly terrorized us all throughout set 4.5.
I don't want to talk about it. Pure now is in 5th place, ahead of DQA right now, and this is where these reroll comps do tend to struggle, especially if someone's already taken 3 Yones out of the box for you, because the Yone and Yasuo combo is required if you want to win the Duelist.
Yeah, there's so much invested in this Yasuo, and it only really goes off when accompanied by Yone, getting those exile stats, the huge lifesteal. With this build in particular, it's kind of low damage, like you need some time on the battlefield to get your duelist stacks going. Yone is critical to that for Yasuo.
And I don't think there is enough HP on the board for these duelists. And just like with Kale, if you're not able to get to the Shyvana like 1 hex before, you know, the numbers are even, you're probably going to lose. And so you got to get there somehow. And that's where positioning really starts to matter. With RFC, you got to make that very hard, unless you have an Aatrox. And that's like the other really interesting thing with this Aatrox is there's a lot of cornered units right now. And that Aatrox is going to, you know, really screw them up.
Yeah, you mentioned how QSS isn't all that good, and I agree with you. But if that is the case, then the units who bring CC to the table, like Aatrox, get much better. And I think we're seeing that right now. It's one of the beautiful things about TFT is it's a self-correcting game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the transitive property is amazing, isn't it? And so PureIron now is still looking to maintain a potential top 4 spot as pockygom. The other hyper roller that we saw is in elimination position. And with the Morgana, these duelists are not going to have a good time. This Kalista in the backline too, even with the Rabadon's not going to be enough. PureIron doesn't want to see himself lose that round. We do have, maybe a couple more deaths. And was that Fiora? Yes, that Fiora kill on the very end is going to keep him alive. 5 HP though. Ramblin going to lose. Pocky going to win. So we've got 3 people within 5 plus 5 is 10 plus 2 is 7 HP of each other.
Nice math. Good math.
Thank you. NA math for short. Oh, Brian, D-Claw for these duelists. What do you think of that?
A solid item. I think the problem is that there's not a very magic-focused lobby you're dealing with right now for the most part. Still, you appreciate the defensive bonus from D-Claw. It's just not as critical as it was like back in the A-Soul meta, where your carries basically had to have a D-Claw or risk getting erased on the spot.
Oh man, at least it's stats, right? When you get that NPC item, I'd rather get something like a D-Claw than a spat item that I can't use.
Sure.
Right? And so the other thing that's actually really interesting at this level of play, Brian, is Zephyr, and how if you're diamond below, Zephyr is just kind of a thing you use, but it is incredibly dynamic in the late game here in pro play.
Yeah, possibly the best item when you reach this stage. It just gives you so much strategic flexibility and really punishes anyone who, again, isn't running a Quicksilver, because Quicksilver is not all that good right now. So you're able to find extra utility on your Zephyr. Another beautiful instance of self-correction.
Yeah, and what you saw there, friends, is the fact that we kept the Zephyr until we saw who we were facing, and then we put it on the unit that would find the most value. So we put it on the carry, which is this tank Morgana that's actually crushing this Tryndamere right now. And with the Tryndamere going away, the only threat on that Morgana is now gone. And look at just that damage mitigation that Morgana has done to these duelists. That Yasuo, though, did roll healing on that Hodge, and without that healing Hodge, we actually might see PureIron get eliminated, but instead Ramblin is going to be coming. It's like that, I don't need an ambulance. You need an ambulance, but not for me. Right? Situation there for PureIron is he's going to sneak into the top 4 after being on the bottom side of the leaderboard literally the entire game.
Oh, that lifesteal was critical in that last battle. I don't think there's any way that Yasuo carries had he rolled damage on the Hodge in that instance.
It's a 50-50 shot, right?
Sometimes
TFT does come down to that coin flip. There's so much manipulation when it comes to RNG, but other times, teams are so even. It comes down to a coin flip. This comp is going to be tough, I think, for this Yasuo. But nice Zephyr, another movement on that Zephyr. You'll actually see people sell units to get a Zephyr off. That's one of the big things for a magnetic remover, as well as this black pool getting every single person. Make sure you get your floaties going, and PureIron are going to get absolutely destroyed by Noster.
It took a while for the Yone to finally get a cast off, but once it did, just the entire team melted.
All right, we're in our top 2. All of a sudden, we're on round 6-3. It's going to be Brawlers against Noster, and this Brawler comp, I believe, does have a little bit of an issue with this Swain, with just so much percent health happening on that other team, even with the Aatrox, with the Jeweled Gauntlet Giant Slayer, which might actually win the lobby at the end of the day.
I think it's favored right now, just based on how these team comps line up. I'm giving the edge to the Aatrox comp. I do want to point out, I don't want to harp on this all day, but for all the concern about the reroll comps, here we are with a 3-cost carry and a 4-cost carry playing for first and second in the lobby. So
no best in slot items either. Right, maybe other than for the Shyvana, right?
Yeah, I think the Shyvana is pretty well built. I mean, you would probably change the IE if you could, but for the most part, just not perfect items. And then who knows if there's perfect items for Noster's comp? I'm not even going to tell you what the perfect Aatrox items are.
I know, right? And so Noster
look at this though, Brawlers come through.
Yeah, it's going to fall. This is going to be a situation when it comes to these two teams is really going to come down to that Aatrox. It's so crazy how you make a decision, 6 rounds ago to carry that Aatrox, and it's going to be the difference between winning and losing right now, either by pulling good chains, right, or by not having enough damage as a carry. So you win or die by this Aatrox right now, in my opinion.
That was actually a tremendous pickup on Carousel for Sphinx. Able to pick up a Dragon Soul spat, and that means a completely worthless brand is able to be removed from the comp. It's going to be Zilean instead. I think that could be a difference maker here.
Oh, for sure. Especially when you just get an extra life without needing to invest that GAs. We do transfer some items over. It's so crazy that Sir Thomas here has been the chosen the entire time. But when it comes to brawler comps, it's kind of just pick your first up. If you want to play brawler, you get a brawler chosen, you should pick it up. But this potentially is going to be the second to last round for our friends here, as the tanks are absolutely crushing it. But it actually looks like Noster's comp doing a lot better this time around with a little bit of a positioning switch. And they are going to win out this time. So it's 1-1 right now, as Sphinx is going to have one more round at his disposal.
Yeah, I thought Sphinx was the one who improved the most from that Carousel. But like you mentioned, positioning is so critical when you get to this stage. And maybe Noster just found the secret sauce to be able to break through this huge front line. There you see a 2-star set, though. Big upgrade.
Huge upgrade, but with a giant slayer, the percent damage is still going to scale with that health. So it's going to be really about who that set I think picks up. If that set picks up that Yone or a particularly tanky champion, I believe that Yone has an Elderwood spat. So by the time that actually doesn't scout, does it randomly, is it going to pick up Ornn instead? That's a very good choice. I wonder how much damage is going to go there. No damage items on that Ornn, and that Shyvana actually just yeeted herself into the team, but no one's really focusing her other than this Aatrox. And once the Aatrox ult, it's going to be rough for Sphinx. And with that Zilean, though, Sphinx gets all of his muscles back. But it is not going to be enough, as Sphinx will fall in second place. And Noster starts out with the win. What do you think about that, Mr. Bryan?
I mean, a big swing from that Zilean doing its best to really change the outcome of that match, as Zilean often does. But in the end, really innovative comp, a cool look. And think about the itemization early on in that game, the choice to go with Giant Slayer and then end up completely rewarded by getting your top 2 match against a 8 brawlers composition. Tremendous. I know, right? And even the Yone doesn't necessarily fit with what was being played there, but you start scouting the lobby, you see what's going on, and you're going to be dealing with these huge units when you get to the end game. And Noster was absolutely ready for it when it came down to heads up play.
And the other thing that I think is a little understated is the vanguards that Noster had on the other side, because what do brawlers get with more brawlers is attack damage, right? Not that magic damage. And so all of that extra attack damage from maybe getting that set to tier 2 was also getting mitigated by those vanguards. So it was almost like it was you mitigated that bonus by running that particular comp, which was almost a direct counter as we look over at the scores, as Noster starts out with the win, already qualifying himself. So if Noster hits 24 points and then wins another lobby, Noster will qualify. That's how that works. Sphinx with 8 points, pockygom with 7, Purier at 6, and those were our hyper roll comps. Ramblin at 4, DQA at 3, Kurumx at 2, and Cottontail at 1. Cottontail kind of having a little bit of a low roll game there.
Well, it was a mix, right? There was a moment of extreme high roll, and unfortunately, after that, not much going for Cottontail. I mean, what do you think about a tough start for DQA? Because you mentioned very young competitor, and certainly everyone's different. I'm not trying to say there is a lack of ability to come back from a younger player. Certainly it could be there, but you've mentioned in the past, DQA has had some struggles with being able to close out a tournament. What do you think about his capability to rebuild after a really tough start here?
So I would love to be able to say things are different, right? But nothing that I saw today in that lobby showed me that anything has changed when it comes to that type of play style or mentality. On ladder, the way that he plays is perfect, right? It's like, it's a first or eighth mentality a lot of the time. And, you get your games out down quick when you get eighth, and, you're going to win a lot of them. And DQA wins a lot of lobbies. And a lot of the time it's because he gets such a distinct HP advantage that when he does start losing, even if he loses 5 or 6 rounds in a row, he's still in first place, right? It's just like, that's how he would prefer those lobbies, not just within the TFT lobbies, but within the score set too. So seeing DQA at 3 points, like if he doesn't win this this next lobby or like top 2s or 3s, that's when I'd start getting really concerned about it. So really good question there, as I think the history is there when it comes to DQA. It's all that we have with him at this point, which is starting strong and kind of flaming out when you gotta lock it up.
One of the things I find about aggressive players in basically every esport is that the aggression carries not only in the moment to moment play, but in how you approach your overall goal. And the concept of tempo and using your advantage to push people into further mistakes, it always applies to aggressive players. So DQA getting out to not only leads in lobbies, but getting out to leads in tournament standings is equally important. He wants to make his opponent sweat. Going to have to rebuild in this next lobby.
Yeah, think about marathons, think about track, right? The person who's winning halfway through the race usually doesn't win the entire thing unless they've developed, again, such a large lead that the attrition that happens later on just doesn't happen, right? So DQA is definitely going to be looking at that, and we're totally going to be taking note as we're going to be going over to ramblinnn right now. And this early game is going to be interesting because we only had 2 hyper role comps in that last lobby. I mean, honestly, I thought we'd be seeing warlords. I thought we'd be seeing duelists. I thought we'd be seeing all of that stuff, but it was the Wukong, which is, moderately popular when it comes to that reroll, and Yasuo.
Yep. Yeah, not exactly the start we were looking for. The Diana wasn't present. Like you mentioned, no Nidalee out there. And we did see a Zed comp that just didn't quite come together. I think one of the things that has shaped my experience with Zed is that when that Chosen arrives is so critical. And I don't know exactly what round DQA picked up Chosen Zed on, but the earlier it comes, the sooner you can start hoarding those units. If you let a few Zeds pass by early and then end up in Zed, it can often be devastating for actually achieving your 3-star Zed.
Ooh, man, hopefully we get another chance, because when a Zed comp does kind of lock in, it's definitely one of the most kind of interactive watching experiences, in my opinion, right? Like, that's where targeting and positioning starts becoming very, very important. And sometimes you position your Zed into literally the middle of the other team and you lose by 8 units, and then you switch him to the corner and then you win by 8 units. Right. And that's just Zed for you. It's too stressful for me to play. A lot of respect for the people who are able to do it, because it's another one of those nosedive comps, right? You're gonna lose early on until you get that Zed, and that takes a specific kind of player to be like okay with.
No, you're exactly right. Mental fortitude is a big part of the game when you're trying to put together a Zed comp, unless you're just high rolling, and then anyone can do that. I can do that when I spike my Zed and then quickly put together my 3-star Zed. Also, you gotta love ninjas, right? Like, if you're of my age, you grew up on like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and just ninjas in general, you gotta support the ninjas.
Support the ninjas, man. One day we'll see them in the game again, I'm sure. Unfortunately, the ninjas that we do see are on other comps. Like, you'll see Kennen like in an early keeper comp. You'll see Akali with Spirit Assassin starts. You'll see Zed with your Slayer starts. You'll see Shen in a lot of different comps because his triple synergy is 2 of the 3 best splash synergies in the game. So with Adept and Mystic. So sometimes it's just good to splash him in. We got to see that a couple times going on, but we haven't really seen any ninja comps. And I think it's okay to take some time to talk about things that we don't see anymore. So why aren't we really seeing the ninja comps right now?
Well, I think that they were kind of... Basically, the payoff is going to be Zed in that comp. Virtually always. You can do Akali, but Akali just has some problems with the general sizing of other units. I think she has a harder time just cutting through things. Akali's really good when you're asking her to kill a bunch of small units. So if you're defaulting to Zed as the carry, I think you should just play Spirits instead. Like, the better payoff, you have to choose one or the other. And once you're in on Spirits, you end up with a better Zed than you end up with under the 4 ninja setup in most instances.
Interesting.
There's also an economic thing that comes with having to hold ninjas. Like, in general, if you don't spike that early Shen, you can find yourself in a really vulnerable position.
Oh, if you don't have ninjas by 4-1, you're screwed. Like, just straight up. In this meta, like, if you don't have ninjas by the time, like, they can actually win, I think the goal is to get them by, like, 3-5 and then have them carry you through the round 4, which might not even happen, right, in the metas right now, because I think ninjas specifically get really messed up by particularly tanky comps with all of those units. And so, especially since the surrounding units on them too are gonna need the Giant Slayer, are gonna need to get some damage in too, but there are no tanks. right? So that's the tough part there. As ramblinnn now is going to take a little bit of influence, I think, from Sphinx, who, by the way, has never really gotten over third place if I cast him. So good luck, buddy. Ramblinnn now going to be taking a little bit out of Sphinx's page with some brawlers.
Yeah, a little brawler start. No chosen, so certainly very far from committed to this idea, but does have the 3 brawler units in early. More of a way of mitigating HP loss than anything else at this stage while he waits for an appropriate chosen.
I love that you said that, Brian. HP is not HP, it's economy. Right? It's
Absolutely.
part of your economy. It's more like money than I think your lifeline at the early part of the game. Because even like something that we'll notice a little bit later is sometimes even in the late game, people will lose streak just to get to their, level 9 5 cost chosen.
Yeah, and that's completely valid. It's all a resource, right? Every resource in TFT is intertwined. So gold equals HP, equals units, equals items. They all have pressuring influence on each other, and combining them in the right mix is how you put together a winning lobby.
As we get 4 brawlers already for ramblinnn. This is pretty early. You might be saying, oh, those are only tier 1 units, but 2 of those tier 1 units, in my opinion, are 2 of the better tier 1 units for their cost. Yes. And that is going to be that Shyvana and that Vi.
No, I agree with you. That's one of the other edges that brawlers bring to the table, is that even when these units aren't leveled up, they are okay. They get the job done. Again, I still think we're mostly trying to mitigate the HP loss, but this brawler comp should do an okay job of that. And when you're not finding a chosen in the early game, a lot of times that can just spell disaster. So this is about disaster avoidance, and I think ramblinnn doing a good job of that thus far.
Yeah, and so this wasn't the best loss in the world. If that Garen went down, that would have been much better. Right. But we're inting for Carousel right now. That's literally what we just did. And so ramblinnn with the weakest brawler comp, still though able to take down 2 units, right? And that's the other thing, in every TFT cast, I think a caster should say and talk about the difference between a good and bad loss. And I think now is a great time, right? Because some comps you want to lose in the early game, so you can get this first Carousel choice.
Yeah, ramblinnn able to use it as a turn that life loss into a bow, which is certainly a key item for Shyvana. Can put together that Runans or maybe a Giant Slayer in the late game. So we'll have to see how ramblinnn wants to put that together.
And this is unfortunate for ramblinnn and DQA, is we have a brawler chosen here right now. At least for ramblinnn, the chosen's not been chosen yet, and so there's going to be some flexibility to come out of that and use those units just as economy. But for DQA, we're locked in, at least for the early game, right? A lot of times when you choose an early game chosen, you wait until like 4-3 or 5-1 to switch out your chosen for 4 cost or 5 cost chosen a little bit later. But we're going to go ahead and run with the Maokai, which is okay. Right, it's not the best.
That's the perfect way to describe Maokai. He's just okay. You can't ever be excited about a Maokai, but can potentially get the job done early as you transition to your brawler endgame, usually on the back of Shyvana.
I believe is the only unit in the game that can slow attack speed when it comes to his just general kit with his ultimate. Unfortunately, he's still just okay, even with those unique preferences, right? One thing that I'm actually a little intrigued about not seeing is actually last Thursday, a lot of people had switched over to Elise in the early game because of her new mana reeve. I'm not really seeing like any cultist players at the moment. Yeah, we have cultist units, but no cultist players in the early game. Probably one of the most common early game packages that you see, but nothing going right now.
Yeah, I was excited about Elise's potential after the rework. I think Mana Reeve is probably an underexplored part of the game right now, and you could certainly see scenarios where that is extremely impactful. But I think the reality didn't turn out quite as kind as we all would have liked for Elise. It hasn't really impressed me as a unit.
That stinks, because I think I totally agree with you. I think the Mana Reeve is a very intriguing aspect of TFT. You weren't here when Kassadin had it, and it wasn't very fun when we had like an entire Mana Reeve origin and class. But in this situation, when certain units have it, it actually does seem pretty great so far, as DQA loses another round. This is not looking good for him. I love it when players prove me wrong, right, Brian? Like when we say things like DQA needs to start fast and we're wrong, right? We love that stuff as casters. Absolutely. Because that shows growth.
No, absolutely. When you're pointing out a perceived weakness from a player, it's not because you're looking to dog them, it's because you want to see them overcome that. And so many times they will prove you wrong as a caster. Everyone knows about the caster curse, right? You say something and then the players immediately make you look foolish. And secretly, that's what we're rooting for the whole time when we're making statements like that.
All right, and so we've got Kurumx still at 100 HP. That's probably a hyper roll comp, usually at 100 HP at this point in time. That's one of those reasons, or a hot, or we've just been hitting, right? That's always a possibility in TFT, right? You hit your Kale at 3-1.
Sure.
Because you're at level 6, right? That can happen. But right now, I'm assuming that whoever's in first and second place are hyper rolling, and the rest of them are going to be running some other types of comps as we put the Hodge on the Shyvana, running 2 Vise. Interesting stuff here from DQA. Seems to be a little paralyzed with without choice right now. We're stuck on these brawlers, and unfortunately for us, our items aren't very brawler oriented. A chalice is always good, right? You always find value out of chalice, but we definitely would have wanted some other things right now.
Yeah, it looks like we're just going to go double Hodge on the Shyvana, and I like that. I like preserving the HP right now. It's not best in slot in Shyvana, but you'll make it work. It's good enough where if you find the right third item, this can still be your carry, and you're not just conceding this early game, which is so critical in the current meta.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time you got to say that in terms of a meta? How the early game is that important? You know, usually with some metas, we're like, okay, let's just walk through the late game because nothing, or early game because nothing really matters until after Krugs, right? Yep. But now with these hyper roll comps, right? This round and the next round are very important. So definitely look off to the right and see if anyone's going to tier 3 a unit right here on 3-2. A lot of risk takers, big pickup here, actually. A lot of risk takers will run here as almost everyone goes to level 6.
Yeah, it looks like DQA going to stay back at level 5, but you can understand why. The pickup there of that third Shyvana, we do go to 6. The pickup of the Shyvana and having the 2 Hodges on it mean you have an early game unit that is absolutely capable of carrying you through lobbies right now, combined with the Dragon Soul buff, which I've been impressed with new Dragon Soul. I've even gone as far as just hard Dragon Soul comps to experiment with it. I wasn't all in on the idea, but 9 Dragon Soul kind of works in some ways where I thought it would be an absolute meme. I'm not suggesting we go that route here, but in general, the Dragon Soul buff has felt much better on this patch.
More consistent, right? It was. Yes. I felt like it was a buff and a quality of life change, right? It just feels inherently better. And I agree with you. I think 9 Dragon Soul is better than 9 Blade Master from last set. So I think are moving on to something a little bit better, as Dragon Soul I think is just a great way to counter really tanky units. We're just not really seeing that right now with, I think, the current stat structure of some of these particular units, especially the Nasus's, the Nasus's of the world.
Nasusai.
Yeah, the Nasusai.
Scientific term for Nasus's.
I'm sorry. Susan needs to be looked at a little bit, in my opinion. But anyway, as Kurum is going to be the next one that we see. Oh, I was like, are we standing up? Is this standing desk meta? Not right now. We're sitting down, but Kurum has a good amount of economy, and we're not hyper rolling for that Nidalee right now, but we are moving towards Warlords.
Yeah, pretty clear path forward for this comp, and obviously extremely strong, not having lost life yet. Although, I think the Shyvana is going to have something to say about that.
Oh, let's see. Yeah, Shyvana has a couple secrets to say and is going to dance them off a little bit later. That double Hodge, though, could potentially roll double damage, in that Shyvana could get CC'd forever if someone does have that CC on the board. And how much lobby reaction in your play that you see in ladder versus kind of these tournament plays, right? Because in ladder, I feel like you play what you play, but in a lobby like this, you can react a little bit more quickly, and you see a Shyvana and be like, okay, I have a top 4 comp, and I know there's going to be a Shyvana. How do I react?
I think you're going to see a real difference in the TFT world from the players who start to adapt their play to the tournament structure, and the players who just come to these events and act like they're on ladder. And it takes time before it becomes really clear what the differences in those 2 scenarios are. But I think you're exactly right. I think it makes more sense to think about where your opponent sits on the leaderboard right now. Is it worth actually making sure they're denied a high finish here? And should I be reacting specifically to what this one player is doing? It's a real question you have to ask. And certainly some of it comes back to just like play your best game. That's how you're going to win a lot of the time. But you can always consider a second factor too. You want to play your best game, but where there's small decisions that you want to tweak just a little bit so you can account for what's on your opponent's side. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think we're going to start seeing the best TFT tournament players differentiate themselves a little bit from the best TFT ladder players.
I agree. I mean, actually, one of the most fascinating things I ever saw a TFT player do was actually someone on the first ever game of PBE who straight up just stole all of the 5-cost units they saw. And my friend was playing that lobby and couldn't get a Samira 2 because of it. And that's just like that type of interaction of, I've only seen a couple players do that, right? Invest in taking units away from people. But with Kale being so popular, actually not really on these lobbies so far, but with Kale being so popular and 5-cost units, you can start messing with the pool a little bit. You might not be going Kale. If you have 14 gold, Kale's in your pack, just pick it up. Right. So maybe someone who is rolling for that Kale isn't going to get that Kale. And that's the type of, I think, advancement in play that's next for our players. I've only really seen Loco Doco do it because he's a duelist player. And so he kind of hoards a lot of the counters to those duelists, which is very interesting. Right.
No, I think so. I think that's the difference between a one trick who's just like, I play this comp, and a one trick who understands how you can always play that comp. And it always fascinates me because the idea of one tricking to me, granted, my experience with TFT is only in set 4, as I mentioned. So I'm sure there could be exceptions to this throughout its history. But in set 4, I could never quite wrap my head around one tricking because it just seemed so inconsistent in all but completely broken metas. And then they were going to get patched out anyway. So why really invest all this knowledge? But the really good players, they just do it different. They understand that comp on a different level than everyone else.
Totally agrees. We do see Cottontail with a moderately early Kale with a bow. That feels pretty good. Double Chalice on the Kindred, very good item holder, just for literally anything. We said that earlier. You can literally put anything on Nidalee and Kindred. And
I think that's one of the great things about Kale too, is Kale benefits from all this stuff.
Exactly. And so you have that carry of, okay, I can put whatever I want on this carry, and then I can just, hold it for Kale a little bit later. That kind of forethought happens much sooner in this meta than some of our more kind of late game Bill Gates legendary comp metas of the past, in my opinion. Your roadmap appears much sooner. And Kurumx is a very good example of that, where if you look at the bench, there's a cultist and just warlords across the way, right? So we're definitely looking for a warlord comp, and we're going to be holding on, and we're probably hyper rolling at this next round.
I think so, and also a real big pickup from the creeps there. Okay,
we got it anyway.
Yeah,
we got
easy
it.
Game.
We got it.
Why not?
Easy game. We hit at 65 gold.
I want to point out too, on the bench, components for a warlord spat right now. Love to see that when you're this deep in warlords.
Yeah, and because it's also an item that's easily holdable for literally anybody. Right. So if you want to put in another synergy, you can put that warlord spat on, and for this one it's going to be Vanguard. So now we can play a Vanguard warlord comp with 2 early game Vanguards, rather than having to wait for a Sejuani a little later on.
Yeah. Now, granted, this isn't going to be as strong of a spatula in the instance of like where you have a warlord chosen. The Nidalee here is sharpshooter chosen. So we're not going to do the 9 warlord thing. That's not what's on the menu here, but just the strategic flexibility you can get from being able to add that additional unit. So huge for these warlord comps. And the Nidalee is together. This is the unit. This is the unit that has people up in arms, been terrorizing every lobby you've been in for the past few weeks. Just throwing spears, ending games.
And the most frustrating part about Nidalee, in my opinion, outside of, any debate on balance and stuff, is the fact that the Nidalee will always win from behind, it feels like, right? Because it's that last spear. She always has just a sliver of health, right? It's like Nidalee, Fiora, and Janna, I feel like that all do that. That will win by like 10 HP. But the issue is that Fiora, while strong, and I've seen some really cool hyper roll Fiora comps recently, Nidalee is better in most ways, because range, warlord, as well as the ability to apply mixed damage, right? So you've got the AP damage with the spear, and then you've got the bounce with just the regular auto attacks. And when you roll damage on Hodge, that's gonna not be nothing. It's, sometimes it feels like you're just throwing a toothpick, but look at this damage going on to these units just from the basic auto with that Nidalee.
9,000 damage on 4-2 from that Nidalee.
Tier 1,
nice
by
and
the way.
easy.
one cost unit, by the way. Nasus is, I think, the other kind of like Nasus with D-Claw is the other like really frustrating one cost unit for me. But Cottontail has a really frustrating item for other people, which is that RFC on Kale. So that Kale is going to be able to position in the back line and hit anyone you want. There is a Kale 2 on the field, though. Did you see who had it?
I did not see.
Yeah, there is a Kale 2 around. And so and here is a tier 3 Nasus.
Oh, look at that. Speak of the devil, Nasus arrives. See how frustrating it can be here. There's a Morgana Chosen, which I've heard some people say that Morgana Chosen might be the best Chosen, which is wild because we don't talk about Morgana as one of the best units right now. But that Chosen, when you get like a free Siphoner buff for your team and can really build around the Morgana, it's very impressive. Nasus says no, though. I got this.
Nasus. You know, I'm more of a dog person than a cat person usually, unless I am going up against Nasus. It's just, there are frustrating and unfrustrating ways to lose, and there's just, it reminds me of old school Diana, right? When Diana used to be able to jump in on Moonlight and 1v4 people. I know it's a thing that's, you know, balanced in the game, and yeah, in the late game when Grievous is there, it's just like, you lose really slowly, and so you have to really you end up hating yourself by the end of it a lot of the time.
Yep. Right? You know it's coming. You're just watching your life bars slowly deplete, and you were ahead early, but you know the Nasus is going to pull it out when we get to the end.
Exactly, and that's what can be frustrating about it. Enlightened, too, another synergy that we haven't really talked about, and you did say Morgana is one of the best Chosens. The extra stats Morgana gets, and just overall damage mitigation, utility type carry, plus the like just enough damage, I think, to be a damaging carry if she chooses. You're the Morgana expert here. Enlightened versus Siphoner, what would you prefer? And what would be best case scenario here moving from this Morgana as we get two loaded dice? Come on, guys.
Gonna have a lot of choices in this next set of shops. For my money, I think Morgana really gets empowered when you can do 6 Enlightened. And obviously you need an Enlightened Chosen in that case, but I often am consciously building towards Morgana very early in the game. Like in general, I like to have Fiora Chosen. Fiora Enlightened Chosen is my sign that I'm ready to go all in on setting up a Morgana comp and hard carrying with Morgana. And I'll go as far as like Jeweled Gauntlet, IE on Morgana with like, Titans, and just use her as my complete source of damage, completely unkillable. When you hit 6 Enlightened, 4 Siphoner, Morgana just goes completely off the rails. And I don't see it all that often in my lobbies, but I would love to see someone bust it out today.
I totally agree with you. When I do see a Morgana, like it's usually kicking my butt. Mm-hmm. And so that is a huge deal, especially in today's meta where like you saw it with that Nasus, right? Where the games can be slow, right? Yep. And Morgana can be very good on long games, so she can neuter the damage of things like Duelist and Kale in the back line. This particular comp, though, is already struggling a little bit, especially at 5-1 with our Kale 1. We're keeping our loaded dice. Maybe with our scouting, we noticed there just aren't that many Kales left. I don't know if you saw, who was it? Solus's weekend meme about looking for Kale past wolves.
Yes, very, very appropriate. We've all experienced it.
Yeah, it's happening right now for Cottontail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now up against another Kale. So we mentioned first game, didn't see too many Kales. Now the lobby just flush with them. Kales all over the place. And you see those diverse items. Again, RFC pretty critical, but Jeweled Gauntlet coming to play, Hodge. It all works with Kale.
It's so funny. Like, I wonder how many people were like, oh, no one played Kale last game. I'm going to play it this game. And like 5 people just came to the same conclusion as we got Elderwood Asol on someone's board right now. I'd love to see Pocky again at some point because we're at 22 HP. Everyone kind of struggling with HP other than Kurumx right now, which kind of just goes to show how strong his particular hyper roll comp is, doing a lot of damage to everybody else. But Pocky has a enlightened comp with the hyper roll Fiora that I was talking about earlier. So this is the meta. This time around, I think this lobby is representing the meta.
Feels closer.
A lot more accurately.
Agreed. We see the Nidalee, we see the hyper roll Fiora, we see all the Kales, and that has generally been what ladder play has looked like. You see really strong performance thus far for the Nidalee. Maybe not so much from the Fiora, but looking to turn around this late game. Full tank Fiora thus far. I've seen people go as far as just carry Fiora and do things like bunch of Hodges. Of course, you could also go a very utility-focused build where you just throw a ton of lockets on Fiora. It all works. Going to go blue buff here, get all those casts. And this is that annoying Fiora you talked about, where it just sits there at the end of a lobby. 1v1s against Fiora. Nobody wants to be in that situation. You never beat Fiora 1v1.
Because you'll get stun locked. It will happen. You are going to get stun locked if that happens. I saw a tier 3 Fiora take down a tier 3 Shiv the other day, like no problem.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're seeing it right now. I mean, every time that Fiora riposts, she's acting like a off tank, right? And so all of that damage that was on that Fiora is the reason why this Yasuo has a chance. Not for long, as this Kurumx is going probably to win for a while.
Nidalee just doing Nidalee stuff, you know? I mean, that's what happens when you empower Nidalee with those items with a 3-star unit. It has the capability to just wipe teams.
I know, right? 1 cost, by the way. And, you know, I think rolling... Because remember, you weren't there. So there was a comp a couple sets ago, maybe just last set, called Candyland, which was very much hyper roll 1-cost units. And so it's kind of similar right now. Instead of 3-starring 3 different 1-cost units, it's usually just your carry, and then finding your secondary carry as your 4-cost chosen a little later on, if you can make it. But what this Fiora is representing is kind of the meta right now, and say, this riposte happens before that knockup, think about how much more damage that Fiora actually does. And riposte isn't nothing, right? It actually scales pretty well when it comes to AP and damage. And there's a reason, again, this Fiora is still alive. I'd actually love to see how much damage the Fiora took versus some of the other people, because that Fiora is the tank right now. Yeah,
it is trying to do tank duty and doing so pretty well there. I think Ramblinn's team... So I have some issues with the Fabled comp in general. It often doesn't pan out, but if I'm going to play it, it's got to look something like what Ramblinn's team looks like right now. Has the 3-star Nico, has the 3-star Nautilus, really empowered those Fabled units. And still, these duelists able to make short work of that comp. The addition of Yone from the loaded dice, critical there. Big item on the Yone too.
It's like advanced Nico sometimes with those loaded dice. But with everyone getting them, that's actually, especially 2 of them, that's actually really intriguing, as the timing of the loaded dice is actually going to be very important. Might have been, like, if you're on the higher end of the leaderboard, might be a good idea just to keep it until some people die and add units back into the pool.
I can see
especially
that.
If you're a Kale player, and now that pockygom is gone in 8th place, having a little bit of a rougher time this time around, not really going on, as we actually have an Elderwood Fortune player as well. But pockygom going to be finishing out in 8th place. Ramblinn is going to be potentially next at 5. Sphinx are, 2nd place from the last one at 10. And Noster, who won at last lobby, in the bottom 4. It's a complete flip right now in terms of the leaderboard.
Yeah, and also the playstyle, I think, really showing the diversity of the current meta. I know there's some griping about the meta, but this looks solid to me. We've seen 2 very different lobbies thus far.
And that's the thing about TFT that's actually really interesting when it comes to tournament play. And I get this a lot when it comes to Fight Night Rising. They're like, oh, it's War Week. We had 1 Warwick comp, right? Oh, it's, it's hyper roll, reroll. And it just kind of depends on what the lobby does, right? And the last lobby, we only had 2 reroll comps and I think 1 Kale comp, right? This time around, we have, I think, 4 Kale comps, 3 hyper roll comps, right? So this is kind of what you're going to see on the ladder. Here right now, we have just straight up Elderwood, just regular old Elderwood along with Fortune, and Elderwood Annie is absolutely terrifying.
It is a very, very difficult unit to deal with. The Elderwood spat on the Ace-Hole, it's bringing me back to a couple weeks ago. Another unit that's very challenging to deal with once you put Hextech and an Elderwood spat on it. Is going to get Zephyred there, but sometimes it feels like it doesn't matter with Ace-Hole, because if it eventually comes down and does its thing, it's so devastating that it will just wipe the team. So let's see what happens when this Ace-Hole casts. Yeah, units melt. Generally expect to see it. Now it has to fight through this Nasus,
who is siphoning through almost all of the damage. We need to get all of the damage focused on that Nasus. It is like Summoner's Rift, right? You got to give Mort some credit when it comes to Nasus and how he feels on TFT. It really feels like a fed Nasus on Summoner's Rift. Like, this is a very familiar feeling if you've ever played Nasus or against Nasus.
100%. Yeah, I'm having flashbacks my time as a top laner. Just Nightmare Nasus is absolutely obliterating me.
I know, right? And right now that's happening in TFT as well, as all of our lower placed friends surviving through that round. And like we said earlier, these games going pretty quick. Usually at this time we have like a couple people at 40. We will have 6 people most likely, but the fact that 4 of them are under 15 HP right now is actually pretty intense. Got to give it to DQA though, who is breaking expectations a little bit. But right now we're looking at a defending lobby champion. So Noster is coming in from a lobby win. And so once he hits 24 points, they will be eligible to qualify, but we got to get there first, and finishing in the top 4 again is the fastest way to get there. But we're going up against a Kale, and this Asol not doing enough, just barely, because
just can't put out the damage right now. Can't put out the damage to get through. Basically siphoning. We saw it from the Kale. We saw it from Nasus. Can't produce enough to counter life gain.
5th place. That's not bad. I mean, if you're Noster, like, the only thing I feel like you wanted to avoid was an 8th. Right, going into this next game is we get a triple elimination, and this is something that Sphinx does so well. You'll see him struggling, and then the next time you look over, he's snuck into the top 4 somehow. And a lot of it is because Sphinx is actually quite the flexible player. Can be victimized by option paralysis. We actually haven't seen a lot of that. We did with the fortune payout, with like option paralysis and lack of intention, which Sphinx has had in the past, but good to see him in the top 4. DQA also on fire. When you see DQA on a roll, that's also very terrifying. These items could be better. Chalice will always be good. Ludens at this point in the game is just going to be kind of like a little bit of tickle damage, as I like to say. And yeah, that's about it for DQA. It's really going to end up being what the rest of the lobby is doing. With those Swain items, though, are quite damaging. Usually, though, you tend to go the tank direction. So this is very, very interesting. Got some good units. Now we just got to get them all to, work together, which they totally are right now.
Yeah, Swain trying to work off the Dragon Soul buff. Swain only really turns on, in my eyes, when you add Siphoner into the mix. That's how you make a sustained take. So maybe just trying to get a little burst out of damage out of the Swain instead.
And is that going to happen, though? Right? Like, is the Swain even going to be able to get there?
Let's see. I could see the Swain just being completely deleted off the face of the earth without ever doing anything in this fight. So,
and it's going to get pretty much destroyed, but is actually doing a lot better against the Nasus than most people are.
Yeah.
Even against the Olaf, though, still the Nasus will reign supreme. And Sphinx is on fire now. Top 4 has really tightened up, as Kurumx, who had a huge lead, is now at 39 HP. And this is where those hyper roll comms do tend to fall off, as Cottontail gets a Kindred 3. Huge pickup for someone who wants to try to win a lobby.
Yeah, you got to start worrying if you're in the hyper roll space.
Oh my God!
Nasus still looked really strong.
Did you see the Kale 3 get picked up?
I did not, but
it's right here, friends.
That'll about do it, I think, from Cottontail. It's now Cottontail's lobby to lose, and it seems pretty unlikely.
All right. This, even against the Nasus, the Kale is going to be attacking very, very quickly.
Yes.
We also have 3 Executioner.
Look at that damage.
Look at that damage. Look at how golden this Kale is. It's the lobby's fault for letting this happen, to be completely honest with you, because it actually took other people to give up on Kale, and 2 loaded dice, right? So I think what happened is exactly what I said could happen, which is some people died. We used our loaded dice. We got tier 3 Kale.
No, great point. Great patience with the loaded dice, getting that tremendous payoff. And I again, Caster's Curse, but I think you got rewarded with a win here for that patience.
I know, right? A Kale 3 should be a win, right? And if not, you got to really give props to like a Zephyr or something like that, right? To keep the Kale out of the way. But this comp could potentially get to the Kale, especially with a Deathblade Olaf and the Kale positioned where it is right now. It really depends on where this Olaf is going to turn, and it's going to be the wrong way. We're so close to getting to the Kale, but it's not going to be enough as we crit instead. DQA does live. That Olaf made it interesting. But this is going to be Cottontail's lobby.
Little bit of a sweat there for Cottontail. I think certainly would have preferred for DQA to hit the bench here as opposed to have to win that one again. But still, huge life lead too. You might sneak through on the Kale once, are you really going to do it a bunch of times? And even able to get the Zephyr there to add a little protection. You have to wonder, when you see that Kale on the other side of the battlefield, were the other players supposed to prioritize that Zephyr and just find some way to get it out of the battle for a tiny bit of time? Is that the key to winning? Or are they just playing for second place right now, which I think is completely defensible?
Oh, I think so too. And I love that you said that. This is like one of my favorite things to talk about in TFT is sometimes the best that you can do in a lobby is second place, right?
Absolutely.
Something I was telling Crowan earlier in the week is one of my most proud moments was actually a 6th place game, right? A game that I was behind the entire time and I was able to like just make something happen. And my 2 favorite games in that sense are a 6th and a 4th place game, right? In terms of games I felt that I played almost perfectly. So in this situation, I think you are fighting for second place. Kurumx should we actually might get a double elimination here depending on who DQA is going after. And I just don't really see a Kale 3 losing at any point in time.
Trying to think if I've ever seen it happen. Certainly, I haven't spent a ton of time around Kale 3, thankfully, but I don't recall any losses, and that is going to wrap it up. Kale 3 takes down the lobby for Cottontail.
Yep, so Kale 3 does, but actually DQA lost to Kurum's Echo, I believe, or Ghost. So we got kind of a rock, paper, scissors situation, but Cottontail was always, that, a-hole kid that's like, rock, paper, scissors, God! It beats everything, right? Yep. That's what Kale 3 was, and we got to see that for the first time.
Yeah, I think that's Kale 3 in a nutshell, basically. Not a lot you're going to do in that scenario. And you love to see the bounce back, too, from Cottontail. He had the fortune situation in the first game. Things just didn't quite pan out. And that could be really devastating. It's hard to recover from that type of scenario. But Cottontail just bringing the A game back, getting a little lucky/smart with the Kale 3. I mean, look, TFT, you create your own luck a lot of the times, and timing is everything in this game. Wisely waiting to use those loaded dice and getting paid hard with a Kale 3.
Let's take a look at those standings. Cottontail in 4th place, but does have a lobby win, right? Look at the day Cottontail has had. Oof, man. Noster 11 sitting in 1st place. Yeah, I know, with 14. Sphinx at 14. DQA at 11. Got to give props to DQA. Love seeing that. Cottontail, like we said, at 11. Pariah at 9. Kurumx at 9. Pockygom at 8. And ramblinnn at 6. So before we go to our break, what is something that has kind of like peeked out at you, either like having fun casting or with the players, having a good time so far, Brian, before we get to our first break?
Absolute blast so far. I love TFT. It's great being here with you all casting this event. What really stands out to me so far, it's got to be that Aatrox comp from the first lobby. I think it was such an inventive comp. So smart for the lobby and exactly what I wanted to see coming into this metagame. How can you find ways to differentiate yourself that people aren't expecting? That's how you can really get some edge here. And I have a feeling that Aatrox is just the first example of that we're going to see today.
I totally agree with you. Jeweled Gauntlet, Giant Slayer, Aatrox. First place in that lobby. And so, again, innovation has been happening, and we'll see if it will continue to happen after the break. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Challenger Series qualifier for the NA Riot qualifiers here for TFT. I am Boop here with Brian. We got the B&B, the bed and breakfast, back for the rest of this cast. So far, it's been a really interesting day of games. We've got some innovation. We got someone who got 8th and then 1st in a lobby, but so far, Noster, Cottontail eligible for that win once they hit that 24 points. We'll go over the scores in just a second. But Brian, you talked about the Aatrox. Now that we're moving forward, do you think the Aatrox style of play is going to be what ends up winning someone a qualifying spot? Is that going to be the difference maker?
I don't know if it's going to be Aatrox specifically, but some form of adaptation, unexpected play, I think will end up being the story of this qualifier when we reach the end of the day.
I think I agree with you, Brian. I truly think that I agree with you too. I'd love to see it, and it's actually been really interesting because our first lobby was very anti-meta. It was almost like the whole lobby was searching for something like the whole time, and no one really got there, right? Other than Noster, it was a very traditional level 9 5 cost, Bill Gates comp on that first lobby. The second lobby, for everyone listening at home, was very meta. Right, we had a lot of Kale comps, and then all those Kale comps died because they held hands at the bottom. And then we had a double loaded dice pop up and a Kale 3. There's really nothing other than a 5 cost unit, maybe even a 5 cost unit, not really going to take care of a Kale 3. So that's what we're already at. Right, let's take a look at those scores just real quick before we go so we can take a gander at where we are. We've got Noster and Sphinx in at first place, but Sphinx does not have that victory. I want all of your eyes to go over to the right here, and that's going to tell you what they need to do to win. Players must first achieve 24 points and then win a lobby or earn 40 points total. But like I said before, but Boop, what if, someone earns 40 points at the same time as someone else winning a lobby? The person who wins the lobby will be the one who wins out the day. The lobby win is the tiebreaker. As we're going to start off with Kurumx, who is doing a good job so far, at least from that last lobby, playing hyper roll comps. Was a warlord player the last time around, and with the belt, you might want to, you're leaving that option open.
Yeah, how is your carousel priority right now? Do you have a strong leaning one way or another? I think carousel priority is so interesting to talk about because
I do too.
It's both super meaningful and almost meaningless at the same time, which is what I love about it, because you have to be able to play just absolutely everything on the carousel. You need to be able to put together comps no matter what you start with, and you're not going to get what you want a lot of the time. But still, the discussion as gamers, we want to do everything optimally, right? We're always searching for the correct answer. And the carousel fascinates me to no end.
Yeah, I have been very vocal about, like, once we do get our spectator mode, I really want to know what win rates are for first carousel items, right? So, like, if you pick a tier on the first carousel, what is the top 4% for, those people in a specific set? I think that'd be really interesting data, as we do have 2 belts here. And honestly, Warmogs is like, if you want to slam, an early item just to push some people over the top, you want to win streak like to 3 or something like that, you can do that. Let's see what this is. We want to vest. So a Zephyr at this point in the game, not that great.
Yeah, you see Kurum's reaction to that cloak as well, but didn't seem pleased by it.
Exactly. We don't have items for our units right now. And, like, again, what is the Warmogs going to do for Diana? Potentially get one more ult off, but what it also does is it makes us less flexible for items a little later on. And that's what Kurumx really has to think about. You can tell he's already stressed out on round 1-4.
Yeah, so one of the great things about Diana is that I find her to be almost completely item agnostic. You can do so many different setups with Diana, and it might be why she's my favorite of the hyper rerolls. I just feel like I can always put together a decent team when Diana's involved. But there's limits to that, and the double belt cloak start is certainly testing it. I think one of the best ways this could turn out is just with a bunch of Zeeks. Like, that's a great place to put those belts. Cloak, there's certainly many Diana items you're pretty happy with, so I'm not as concerned about that. But a double belt opener, not my favorite when I'm looking down at Diana.
Yeah, Kurum's having that nightmare where you open your eyes in your dream and you're performing naked right now. That's what his comp is doing right now, right? They don't have any support whatsoever on the item side. So if I'm Kurumx, I'm kind of feeling like, hey, let's lose streak all the way to the carousel, right? So I can get my money because I don't have the items to win. So it's going to be easier to lose. So now I got to try to get as many good losses as possible.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I think specifically Spirit Diana does have some capacity to just like steal some early games as just a pretty powerful unit. But I think just staying at level 3, playing slow and steady, and making sure these items get better should be Kurum's priority right now.
All right. I'm actually very intrigued to see where this is going to go, especially since we still are looking at our warlords right now. We are kind of one-tricking warlords as we speak. Warlord 9 can win a lobby. No question about it, right? But we do need to get those. I like to call it golden warlords, right? We got to get tier 3 multiple units, right? I've even seen people make Carrie Garen, or Brian, as I like to say, Karen. Let's make that happen forever. Carrie Garen is always going to be known as Karen from here on out. And we tend to, I think, prefer to play that way. Just there are certain, team comps that certain players like to drive more than others. And Kurumx seems to like to drive this Warlord comp, who is going to find value out of things like those belts, even if you just put a singular belt on someone like Garen. But we're still probably going to lose. And that's the hard part, again, for Warlords, since you want them to start ramping up. This is where they get their wins and then they kind of fall off, but we're not even there yet.
Yeah, the buff too is certainly more impactful in the early game. Like if you're able to get those buffs stacking nice and early, it does make an impact, especially in this stage when you're playing without a lot of items. But look, Nidalee has a lot of hype on this patch for a reason. If you can just put together this Nidalee, it can make up for a lot of deficiencies in your comp. And I think the items just didn't favor continuing to stick with Diana. So I support Kurumx trying to make a move here, trying to get into a better space with what was a pretty tough item start.
I mean, if we weren't playing Warlords, would have been maybe the worst item start we could have asked for. A lot of people do like getting Belt off the first carousel because of Sunfire Cape, but we didn't even get that. and one of the best Warmogs users in the game is a tier 5 unit. So we're either just waiting, and those belts are going to be going on something else, potentially a Morello's. Like you said, a Zeke's, I think, is always good. Any of those kind of spread offensive items will always be valuable, right? The idea for those of you at home as to why it's good is instead of having like 60 damage on one item on one person, you have 80 total damage, for example. I'm making these numbers up because I think they're easier, but you have 80 total damage across 3 separate people. So you end up getting more stats sometimes with these stacked items. But if we do go Zeke's, where is that attack speed going to be most benefited for in that Warlord comp?
Yeah, so certainly you can get some value when Katarina increases attack speed. I think that's fine. Like, you're just speeding to a cast, which is really the whole game with Katarina. Can you get this ult off? Nidalee, sure. It's the spears that define the character, but again, you're speeding to a cast. And I think that's the name of the game with Warlords. The more often they cast their spells, the higher your percentage of winning. So Zeke's just contributes to that in an all-around way. I don't think it's the best item for Warlords, but you can find good homes for it.
We were just talking about pets. It's just like that. We'll find you a good home.
Right.
We'll have to go through, we'll have to come over to your house first and make sure that everything is baby-proofed and, and all of that stuff before we can make it happen, before 5-cost units are allowed to come into the house. But Kurum's still going to be running through these Warlords and these Vanguards. The unfortunate thing is again, this early game comp is strong. Unfortunately, we missed our power spike because we spent 2 rounds playing Assassins, right? Yeah. And so a little bit of lack of intention there. Sometimes you get your spirit chosen and you're like, okay, I'm going to play this Diana. And then halfway through, you're like, I don't want to play this Diana. And you just go with what's normal. And you kind of like just lose those 2 rounds and you take that 2-round differential. And that's exactly what Kurumx is doing right now. And it's going to be even more. But we are going to be anting for Carousel. I mean, we're probably going to be pretty early on the pick list for the next Carousel too.
Yeah, I don't see things turning around all that quickly. And it's interesting. We went bow on that Carousel, and you see that's still not doing anything here. We still don't have an item. And we see a chosen Slayer Zed. An interesting chosen, but it kind of feels like the die is cast here already. Like, is it too late to move into Zed and try and hyper roll that? We only have 1 bow. We talked about how critical RFC is. We talked about how critical Zeke's is. No Zeke's made yet, although there are other belts for it. So interesting to see what Kurum does here.
All right, we're committing to even more Warlords. After this round, I'd love to check out what Sphinx is doing too, to see like if there's a difference between our 78 HP players, right? If Sphinx is doing it on purpose, whereas I think Kurum has been on an uphill climb, right? So I wonder if the other 78 is going to be a little bit of a different vibe. You know what I mean? As these Warlords might actually be able to take down some units, but the Zeke's and the Siphoner is going to be too much. Again, this is going to be a 5th loss in a row. We have not won a round yet. Hopefully, these Krugs are going to give us something. A chain vest even would be amazing for this team comp. Literally anything else other than a belt would probably be great. Got to get some items together here. Start stemming the bleeding a little bit because that HP is tanking very quickly. Yep, fortune without fortune. Exactly right, friends. My favorite comp. I know, right? I play it all the time. It's actually crazy. Sphinx, though, is... fascinating. Yeah, really interesting. This is fascinating, as this is the comp that Kurum actually went away from. And both players finding themselves at the bottom of the lobby. So there was no way out for the Diana comps. They were headed here one way or another. Have to see if we can rebuild now. Items here are going to be critical because I don't love that locket on the Diana, assuming you're trying to carry with it. It's acceptable. You can make it work, but you really would love to utilize that for a more impactful slot if you can. Could have been a Hextech Gunblade, for example. Pretty good item on Diana. And, Asol, who is going to be coming up a little bit later. But we actually might be able to... I was about to say it. Roll into tier 3 Diana. So we do have a hyper roller right now with Sphinx, and it's gonna all the power is going to be on the Diana. And now the locket is looking a little better as, as it does scale with the level, but only in hindsight, right? Yeah, it only works because it's level 3 now. Certainly, that was the direction we were headed. We needed to spike that Diana, and the buff here. Look at this, though. We talked about the one cost meta not being present in lobby 1, but that has changed as here we see a 3-star Fiora on the other side. I think Fiora has her work cut out for her here, though. I give the edge to Diana by a pretty large margin in this matchup. Oh man, Diana 3 is absolutely insane. You know, as a caster, sometimes I'm like, I wonder what would happen if you sold all the units except the Diana, right? Because I think that the Diana might be able to pull around off of something like Kurumx right now. But now we can start adding to our other units, right? And so if we have this package right now, what does this usually go into later?
I am very comfortable staying in this lane, running it hard to Assassins and Spirits. I think that is a completely acceptable comp. Even in the late game, if the items are really good, then your Diana can pretty much keep pace with most of the hard carries. Now, is it easy to get a first when you're just sticking with Diana the whole time? I don't think so. It's hard to close in a lot of instances, and you will get outscaled by stuff like Kale. But when you look at this lobby, the HP totals are trending kind of low in some instances. And in those scenarios, I'll go Assassins. Like, I'm comfortable playing 6 Assassin and some Spirit. And I think that's good enough if your itemization is there.
I totally agree with you, man. As much as I personally don't like seeing, like, you know, everyone has their unit that's just like, you know what I mean? Diana is that unit for me. It's Nidalee for other people, right? Fiora for other people, Janna for other people. But that Diana is something that, like, is going to eat you up if it gets enough time, right? And isn't one of those units that's like, okay, there's, you know, it's 1v4. I can take this Diana down. Just like that, you know, Siphon or Nasus before, this Diana can take down 4 or 5 units on their own, especially if we get another really good item to go along with that sword on this next round. So again, it means nothing that the rest of these units are tier 1. I mean, it means something, but they're more meat shields for the Diana right now than anything else.
No, you're exactly right. But the other thing worth noting too is that we reached this stage with very little investment. Like, as far as economy goes for being a hyper role comp, we're pretty clean on the other side of having completed our unit, which means we're going to be able to play a more traditional game. And, you know, I mentioned just going all in on your Assassin Spirit comp when you hit 8. In some scenarios, if you end up far enough ahead on economy, you can just push to 9 and look to make a really powerful comp in that case. So it's more common we end up at 8, but certainly that option's on the table.
A lot of people not really getting to 9. That first lobby was kind of an outlier in that sense, just in general.
Yeah, I think so.
9 is something that you just don't really see unless someone's winning by a lot, right? Because the games are ending sooner because, again, these hyper-roll comps. Noster, though, really killing it right now. You got to keep an eye on Noster, especially since we already do have a lobby win to get us to 24 points. I believe if we win, that is 24 points for Noster. So, definitely keep an eye on that. And then Sphinx now is still running those 5 assassins. Our last assassin, I'm blanking on who exactly. Talon is the last assassin. That's so crazy. People, I feel like of all the characters in the game, people forget about him. Like,
he's had a large fall from grace in the last few months. I mean, when I started playing TFT, I came in at the era of Talon. And you want to talk about units that we all hate? I hated Talon, despised Talon. Would just leap around, delete your entire team. And as a new player, I didn't quite understand counterplay at that point. So I'm like, well, this just kills all my units. What am I supposed to do? Obviously, I spend more time at the game. I start to understand it. But there's no question Talon was a dominating unit for most of set 4.
Well, actually, at the end of set 4, right here, two Mondays ago, Talon was the last ever set 4 champion comp. Got a first,
I believe it.
Second. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, Sphinx now going to try to continue winning out with this Diana, and now with that IE, it is going to happen. Usually with IE, I like to put the Titan's Resolve with the Diana too. That's probably a much better investment slot item than the Locket. The Locket is going to be more utility focused. So maybe, you know, once this Diana kind of peters out, those items are going somewhere else. They look like Talon items. So that could be eventually where they go.
No, very true.
Over to Noster.
I think that's a very reasonable transition to make as well. I am curious to see where this comp ends up.
All right, we're going over to Noster 11 now. Won the first lobby, got 5th in the second. And so we're at 14 points. So if Noster wins this lobby, he will qualify at 24 points, right? And then would need to win another lobby, which is actually pretty insane to do it in 5 lobbies. Noster 11 is I know, is running that mage comp, going up against that Diana. And now you're seeing the power of Dragon Soul, right? What you saw there was a Dragon Soul situation, and I think how it was meant to be designed, right? To punch through that shielding and punch through that HP.
No, you're exactly right. And I love that ASOL has kind of found a new way to go about its business, being a cornerstone of these Dragon Soul comps as much as just the hard mage comps that we saw previously. I want to know on Noster's side, we are looking at a fortune comp. I'm assuming since it's on a chosen Tom Kench, it's probably been that way from the beginning. That's why we're at level 7 with 50 gold at 3-7. So it's going to be interesting to see how hard Noster pushes to the upper reaches of economy. Are we trying to get to 9 in this case? We talked about how it's a rarity, but in this circumstance where you're really far ahead of the rest of the lobby, maybe you can make it work.
Yeah, the other thing that you could try to do is 3-star the Annie, or even the Viger, because 3-star Annie can carry. I've seen it happen. I'll never forget a day where it was a 3-star Annie with Dragon's Claw, Elderwood, and I forget what the other thing was, and it was a 2-star Samira, and the Annie just stood there, slowly throwing her cotton balls at the Samira, and was fine. Won that round, almost drew, but ended up winning the round in the end.
We've all seen the unkillable Annies and the nightmare when they set up shop across from you and slowly delete your entire team.
I know, right? Even the non-mage Annies can do that sometimes. But now that we actually do have a loss from Noster, another win here is going to give him about 6 to 8 gold, I believe. And we're not going to win unless this ASOL gets another ult off, and that's not going to be the case. So what you're seeing right now is the fortune fall off. It happens exactly here every single time. Remember,
it's so fast too. It comes at you so fast.
It's like you literally, are walking and all of a sudden you fall off a cliff that you didn't even see. It was a mirage and it ended up being real, right? You just fall off that cliff and now we're stuck with fortune, right? And so when people say fortune jail, this is what they're talking about. Even when you use fortune as a means to push ahead, you're still going to end up losing like this eventually. I'm intrigued to see how long this fortune is going to stay. I mean, we don't even need it. We're at 79 HP and we're only on a 2-game loss streak. We're being a little greedy right now.
Well, that's the thing. That's the entire purpose of fortune, right? It's supposed to coax you into saying, well, just one more try. And then, I'll get my 10 gold and get out. And then you see your loss streak is at 3. And I go, well, maybe I can get like a nice item here if I can just get this one win. And I only lost by 1 unit. So I'm going to give it another shot. And then well, that one was close. Let's do it one more time. Next thing you know, you're 10 losses deep and you're out in last place. So
so true, man. So true. And even if you do cash out at 10 HP, it's not guaranteed that the next matchup you have isn't a counter to your team comp that you're going to develop, right? And we actually saw that last round, I believe, with Cottontail. So this is another chosen that I think you always have to think about, which is Kindred, right? So especially since both of their chosens with the Spirit and the Executioner are very, very strong, as we have now pivoted over to a Kale comp. And so we got a little weaker, I think, to start, but I'm very happy to see that we've just given up on fortune, right?
Yeah.
We're not
correct call.
Anymore.
Correct call. Much better discipline than I would show in the same scenario. So props to Noster.
Big same, Brian. Big same. I have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Fortune Gaming.
It almost feels exploitative to those of us who are so drawn to the gambling aspect to have fortune in the game.
I know,
no, but seriously,
right?
I think it's such a brilliant design. It's so smart. And the fact that it can derail both amateur players and great players is what's so brilliant about it. It's so perfectly designed to entice you.
It's like both the great equalizer and the great killer of TFT, right? Like, I've seen the 10 HP person cash out on fortune and win a lobby, right? But we also have seen the 10 HP person cash out on a 7 fortune and get 8th, right? Yep. And that's balance for you, friends. Hopefully we never get a hyper roll fortune meta. That'd be insane.
That's scary.
But yeah, I know, right? But DQA is running 4 Spirit right now. Usually with 4 Spirit, you tend to see like a very auto attack based package around it. And judging by those synergies, that's exactly what we have.
Oh yeah, DQA put together a nice little comp here. Had 2-star Kale for several rounds now, and just running that. I think he's in an incredibly strong position. Only a 1 win streak, so somebody beat him after that Kale arrived. But I really like both his itemization and just how his team has come together at this stage. 2 executioners, my favorite number of executioners, maybe 4. Maybe 4 is better. But I think there's a lot of value to just being able to take these kindreds, put together a nice little team comp on the fly based on these Kales.
And so the Kale battles are on. Our 5-cost units are showing up. Our siphoners, our sets, our brawlers, everything's starting to show up. And now this Kale actually going to get clipped by the Cho'Gath, and CCing the Kale is one of the only ways to get there. And I just, I said this kind of just to say it last time and a couple other times before that. But if you're not within 1 hex before that Kale transforms, you're probably losing.
I think you're exactly right. That's the danger of Kale. Kind of a squishy unit does have some weakness, but there's a reason it's the de facto 4-cost chosen, item agnostic, completely capable of taking over a game. And I think a solid addition to the TFT ranks. I actually like playing with and against Kale. I understand from prior to my time with the game, people were very concerned about the return of Kale, particularly chosen Kale. But I think it's been one of the better carries in set 4.5.
I think the argument can definitely be made. As a wishy-washy response. No, I think definitely the argument can be made. I think the items are definitely a lot less flexible. While she can be agnostic, I think there is an obvious best in slot for her, right? But she's functioning with the other ones, like this, for example. This is not best in slot what we're seeing right now outside of the RFC, but the other stuff complements Kale so well along with the Divine. And the reason why you need that Divine again is you saw that Cho'Gath CC that Kale. Kale then went Divine and got to attack again, right? And so we got to keep going with those auto attacks, get and transform, and the Vi was right there, but we were able to take her down just in the nick of time. And now with Adept too, it's going to take even longer to get to that Kale.
What's your sense of how the Divine changes have impacted Kale specifically? Because I think they're really hard changes to get your finger on the pulse of, because you don't necessarily feel them all that hard in gameplay. But if you look at how Kale has kind of risen up, not to say Kale wasn't present prior to the Divine changes, but it feels like it's the de facto 4-cost chosen now, where it was kind of competing for that slot with Asol, with Olaf, a bunch of other units previously.
She's consistent. Right? Probably the most consistent carry in the game, especially with an RFC. And I think the other thing that goes understated is the fact that they all ascend at the same time now. Right? And so all of them ascend at the same time. And so you get like a very obvious like terrorist damage increase for 6 seconds. And if you notice, when that Kale ascends, it's almost exactly when the auto attacks change. And so those 6 seconds are where most of the damage goes. Because that's the other thing about Kale. So if you can make it past the Divine buff, you could actually get there in time. So like sets that do sit-ups for too long can sneak a Kale victory. Samira can also do that with a nice ult into the back line. But we got to get there first. And again, we take the Kale out of the corner, and it's going to be a lot more vulnerable than the other units. But Noster 11's team comp got a lot weaker because we transitioned again into a quasi sharpshooter warlord duelist comp there on the other side. So far, also that Kale does not need attack speed, Brian, because it's got spirits with it along with a Zeke. So that is why you're not really needing the Rage Blade, for example.
Yeah, exactly right. I think you saw some of the problems with playing against Kale there. It was CC'd early, pulled into the mix by Aatrox. Look, another chosen Aatrox doing its best to carry a game. But pulled into the mix very early, looked vulnerable, but then it just does Kale things. Pops off, takes down the matchup.
Kale things. Good old Kyle. All right, ramblinnn.
Kale things.
Exactly. Duelist 5 with this hyper roll Yasuo. These Yasuos have been around for a while, so we'll see how long they're going to be able to stick. We do have a tier 3 Shyvana and not really anything else, and not even able to get through that Fiora, let alone the Yasuo there. As Cottontail's eliminated for an 8th, a 1st, and an 8th for Cottontail.
Feast or famine. We talked about DQA as the potential feast or famine gamer, but it's turning out to be Cottontail today. Very, very wide range in outcomes thus far.
literally the widest.
The widest possible range.
Yeah, widest possible range. The day that Cottontail has had, I mean, I'm going to be taking a nap after that. I'm straight up sleeping after a day like Cottontail has. That is exhausting for the mental. I'm intrigued to see how we get to the 24 points because we're only going to be at 12, even with a lobby win. That's actually insane. That's how we know that the games might go a little long today. As DQA on the top of the leaderboard, playing a little bit slower than usual, but able to maintain that top spot. But right now we're over looking at ramblinnn again. It's going to be these duelists against Sphinx's assassins, who did take a loss not too long ago, but the assassins are going to be okay with those duelists, especially if that Diana is going to ult again, which she does. ramblinnn going to take another loss.
As long as your Diana is alive, you're in the fight. And showing exactly why their Diana pops up a shield, takes down the opposing duelists.
Diana is such an interesting unit. I feel like sometimes she just absolutely destroys people like those duelists, and other times she just gets deleted, right? Like if the Kayle focuses her first, because she is going to jump into the back line, right? So if the Kayles and the Executioners focus down that Diana first, you're going to lose your carry pretty early because the Kayle's going to win that most of the time. Very interesting to see that I thought that was a different item, but there was a Warlord Swain there. I wonder if Kurumx is still running those Warlords, or if we're already on our 6 Warlords and we don't really need the other ones. RFC on the set. We're going to go ahead and level up, pick up some more units. Where is that RFC going, my friend?
Some good options here for the RFC. Can certainly look at just solidifying your Callista a little bit. Could put it on the Fiora, or there's the old standby RFC Lee Sin. And there we go.
Oh my goodness. RFC Lee Sin is, in my opinion, one of the bigger baits in the game, because
you think
sometimes he gets stuck not kicking anyone in the corner, depending on his positioning. And so that can be unfortunate. This is not going to be one of those situations, but actually, yes, it is. And so, like, that's exactly what happened,
value.
right? Because he had a move to get there, right? He didn't find any of that value, and it's going to be Samira against the Yasuo, and the Yasuo is going to lose. That was, thank goodness for that death blade on that Samira, is what I got to say. Samira 2, by the way, by Noster. So even at 13 HP, you got to respect Samira 2 in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah, one of the scariest carries in this set for sure. You get the itemization right on Samira. Again, another unit that's capable of just 1v6ing, 1v7ing casts and just blows up the entire opposing team.
Okay. Pockygom now. 35 HP on fire in second place. So everyone having a little bit of a hard time today in this particular lobby, which means to me that anyone can still win it, including everyone from Purire up to DQA. Pockygom, though, is going to be running a Hyperroll Brawler comp, and we've got Nunu, so I can make my Yoshi noises. Are you ready?
Go for it. Okay.
Right, ready? Lem, you got it. Yeah, lem. And any more?
One more?
What's your nom noise? Nyam. All right, Purire is going to get taken down, but that Nunu is going to be scary forever, especially with a Hextech Gunblade. You gotta, and a QSS. I mean, he's hungry. He's going to be going to the buffet.
Yeah, that's a well-protected Nunu. Able to weave in an Elderwood synergy into this brawler comp via the Elderwood Spat on Shyvana. So not the traditional Shyvana carry. Instead, really a Nunu carry here, and looking pretty strong thus far.
Nunu carry, very, very popular in China. I believe the Double Titans Resolve build is the Chinese Nunu. And so definitely some influence there. And one of the best ways to take down other brawler comps, in my opinion. And so in TFT, there tends to be this weird thing where the strongest comps tend to be countered by themselves most often. One, because you have to split units, and two, you're kind of equalizing it and letting the game and the items decide where you're going. And so with Hextech and QSS on that Nunu, you're going to be able to take down a Shyvana much quicker than maybe you would have anticipated. And this might have been a way to get through to the Kayle from a couple games ago as well. We don't have any extra HP to make the initial noms 100% positive, but I would say 90% of the roster is going to get eaten by this Nunu in its current state. And we get our first meal to start things off.
Yeah, more snacks for the Nunu. This Shyvana is quite interesting as well. This is not typical Shyvana itemization, but I think this is going to work out pretty well. That Deathblade, Runans, and the Elderwood, you see just standing toe-to-toe with the Kale, kind of blowing it up.
Blowing up Kale, a lot of the people in the lobby is going to be A-okay with anyone who finds anything close to finding a solution for that exact problem. So Kurumx, who had a very, very was all Warlords, is now running 6 Elderwood. We also have a chosen Elderwood Zaya, something that we don't see every day.
This is another real mishmash of a comp. There's a saying in football, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. I am kind of getting some of that vibe from this comp. I don't know exactly who's quarterbacking this team right now, but there's no question the units here are individually powerful. And you see that 2-star Ornn has distributed a bunch of items around this team. Maybe that's enough to carry Kurumx.
Maybe. You got to give props to Kurumx for doing 2 pivots in a game.
Absolutely.
And potentially... Oh, never mind. But you got to give him credit for getting 5th. That's a situation where 5th place actually is... If you were to ask me, best case scenario in Kurumx's situation, especially with the awful Warlord start he had.
Right. We were there for the early game. It was not going well whatsoever. You have to know your ceiling in the game of TFT. And if this is a lobby where you played extremely well and got a 5th place, that's not a problem.
Exactly. And 5th place in this situation for someone like Kurumx is totally fine, right? We've got some time. We're still developing points, right? And no one has unlocked anything just yet. Noster,
look at how tight the top of this lobby is right now. 16,
know, right?
15, 14, and 13 HP.
All by 3. 3 HP separates the entirety of the top 4. This Samira in the backline so crazy, but this is the situation I was exactly talking about. This Nunu is going to beat that Samira as Noster does fall. 3 HP for him. ramblinnn, it has 2. DQA and Pocky are going to win the 1v1 versus those 2. So ramblinnn and Noster might actually face each other on this next round, and we will get an elimination. Honestly, DQA and pockygom at 16 each could both get eliminated in one round as well, depending on how badly they get beat. It doesn't get any closer than this, Brian. There's not really many games that come down to, 10 HP differences, let alone 3 HP differences.
Yeah, such a tight end game. Going to come down right to the wire. Whose positioning do you like?
I like this Aatrox right now. I also really like this Olaf in the back line, but this is the comp that did lose against the Nunu. The Nunu seems to be a moderately good counter to the things that are left remaining. That might end up being kind of like the play of the lobby so far.
I think that's where I fall. I think the Nunu carry is sort of brilliant for what's left. And we saw the situation, Samira doing its thing. It just can't chop through the Nunu in that scenario. And I think some of these comps might keep finding that problem. Let's see if this Olaf-Samira combo can find a W against these duelists.
I bet they can. These duelists are getting pretty paper thin right now. They've already maxed out, especially with a lot of them at tier 3 for a while. And the Samira is always going to outscale those duelists, especially with that Rage Blade. So at least a 3rd place. Is DQA going to be able to survive this Nunu? Nope.
Look at that Nunu. Just walk up to the Kale and get the chomps in. And that's going to take DQA out by only 1 HP, -1. Tough loss there for DQA. Would have loved to have the pairings work a little bit differently. That's how it goes in TFT.
Dude, I think this Nunu might win the lobby.
I think so too. I just think it's really well set up, really smart. Again, the story of this lobby is going to be finding that alternate carry. Now, Shyvana's doing work in this comp as well. I don't want to downplay Shyvana's role, but it's really all about the Nunu.
I mean, look at everyone on Noster's comp. Every one of them will get eaten. And so we actually move everyone to the right. So the Samira is guaranteed to be potentially guaranteed to be the last person eaten, and actually almost goes into the Nunu. Look how much damage she isn't doing and is actually going to be targeted by that Nunu himself.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be all up to this Olaf. Will that Olaf be able to make it? No, he will not, as Noster is going to miss out on the cutoff by 2 points with a 2nd place. Big games from Noster so far, much better than the last couple weeks that I've seen him play. Good games from them. But in terms of the lobby, we got some more, quasi-innovation, because that Nunu comp was really popular when Elderwood was good, right?
Yeah.
But we haven't really seen a ton of it so far. But I mean, against the Samira, that was as close to direct counter with just one unit than I've ever seen in TFT.
Yeah, it felt like a perfect counter to what was going on in the lobby. And I don't know how much of it was, oh, this is the shape of this lobby, so I should look at putting Nunu into my comp, and how much is just Nunu comes together and it just works out that way, that you end up in a really good spot. But the story of this tournament, like we've been saying, innovation in spots where you don't have the textbook team comp. There you saw it with Nunu. And the other thing I really liked about that Nunu is how item efficient it was. It only needed 2 items to really shape the outcome in that lobby, which means you get to distribute those items onto other units. And it let the Shyvana be empowered despite only being a 2-star Shyvana. Usually we've seen 3-star Shyvana have to be the one that carried. 2-star able to get it done there with a few special items.
All right, we're getting some people close to that 24-point window. We tend to hit the 24-point window at round 4 and then wait for a winner after that. But everyone that is eligible to hit the 24 points is Sphinx and up. So Noster, DQA, Pocky, and Sphinx could all hit 24 points on the next lobby. Kurumx, Cottontail, ramblinnn, and Purar need the game to slow down a little bit more. Lobby wins would be great for them. Huge block, honestly, from the entire lobby there, that Noster did not win that lobby, as he would already be eligible for the win on the next round. So everyone thank everyone thank their friends, right? That Noster is going to be in not at 24 points, and Pocky was able to take him down.
Yeah, certainly guaranteeing at least around 5, if not more. And I think the lobby is fortunate for that, because that was a strong looking comp. I think Noster did a great job of putting together a really great looking end game. Just kind of ran into an unfortunate counter, and now we have to see if pockygom can continue to keep the momentum going and use it to lock up 24 points and put himself in striking distance of winning this entire qualifier.
Yep, we're going to get to our next game in just a moment, but this lobby is actually pretty tight. So something that I also want to remind everybody is that the person with the most points might not win at the end of the day, right? They probably will, but say DQA and Noster hit 24 at the same time, right? It takes a while to get to that, win, and our number 1 point getter is actually not the winner of the day. That actually happened last time with Ramkev. So these scores right now are all just to hit 24. Once we hit 24, the game changes. And I'm actually really excited to see how the lobby is going to react when someone does crest that 24 points, which Noster only needs a 7th to do.
Such a great point. We talked a little bit earlier about tailoring your tournament game towards the realities of what it takes to win the tournament. And once you have someone cross that threshold, are the other competitors going to kind of team up and try and isolate that player to keep them from just closing out the lobby and ruining their chance at winning? It'll be fascinating to watch that develop.
I totally agree with you. And again, once these players start learning the game and the set even more, you'll even by the end of last set, I like the last kind of month and a half in the set, because everyone's functioning with the same information. Everything's pretty good to go with them, and it's really that skill expression that brings them to those victories. And what's actually really exciting too, as I don't know if you saw, but Mort said that the next patch, I believe 11.4, is going to be very major. So these things aren't going to be here forever. And so let's appreciate them while they're here. So Cottontail, having a day. Having a little bit of a polarizing day, if I say so myself. A little bit.
The most polarizing day possible is what Cottontail has currently experienced. If the pattern continues, though, Cottontail is going to win this lobby. So I called it first. I'm here for Cottontail's eventual win.
It's all about the patterns, right? Themes will buff you. That's or nerf you, no matter who you are. That's why, if you run Lucian Senna in the bot lane, you probably will win, because it's thematic, right?
Correct.
Zaya Rakan, thematic, right? That's how you play games. Cottontail, though, very easy early duelist opening, but keeping, fortune, keeping actually all of the offshoots open right now. We got a lot of money on one of these rounds, it's looking like. So I've seen one person experimenting with this recently, and I think they're nuts. But leveling up on these NPC rounds is something that I've been seeing some people do to hit a 2-cost chosen earlier. I think it's dumb, but we'll see if we ever see it again, because I might only say that because I've never seen it successful, right?
So,
you never know.
So prior to this patch, it was something I employed a lot. I actually was pretty high on 2-cost chosens, and I thought they were big difference makers. Now, with the 1-cost chosens being the focus of the metagame, I tend to agree with you. I think it trends pretty hard to just an outright mistake. But I do think there were circumstances on the last patch where you could make a very good case for just trying to hit that 2-cost chosen. I mean, like, Zed is a unit we see in front of us right now. Zed is a perfect example of a 2-cost chosen that could really carry from that slot. And if you found that early Zed, your path to victory was often clear on the last patch. So I understand the hesitance to go that route, but I do think certain metagames will present opportunities for expressive play. And keeping all the options open is always going to be the hallmark of a very good TFT player.
And so we'll see if Cottontail is going to be able to climb out from the bottom. I'm actually not going to mention what DQA's thing is. Actually been very impressed by how differently DQ has been playing these last 2 lobbies than like the hundreds of other lobbies I've seen him play. And I gotta give him credit. Again, that growth out of a 17-year-old like that is... Yep. I was not a fun person at 17.
I was the worst.
I was awful.
Yes, I wouldn't want to be around me if you paid me to hang out with 17-year-old me. Just the worst.
I know, right? I failed chemistry when I was 17. I would not have been able to do this at 17. I wouldn't have shown up. I would have slept through it at 8 o'clock at night. That's what I would have done.
Yeah, that was completely in my range as well. I'm glad we've matured to the point where we can now attend our engagements and be here today casting this tournament together.
And so now that we're going forward, hopefully we don't get any more bugs going on. It seems like Kurumx did suffer from a chosen mechanic bug. I believe the bug is when the chosen doesn't register. And so something was going on there. A lot of people mentioning it. So we'll definitely review the tape and discuss that when we have some time. We don't want to speak on it until we've seen it with our eyes and stuff like that. So that's why we haven't talked about it just yet. But now we're going towards our first carousel, and Cottontail is looking like a first pick here.
Is looking that way. Passed on a chosen. There was a chosen Diana in the shop. Cottontail choosing instead to stick to the duelist guns. And you can see why. A lot of early duelist units, a lot of pairs looking to put together a comp that has been really a terror of this patch. The duelist comp has had its ebbs and flows, but never quite fallen out of the meta, right? Like, since I have begun playing the game in set 4, Yasuo has always been a thing. And it's just a question of how good is it at the moment. When I started, it was probably the best thing to be doing, which was great for a new player like me, because I'm like, I just pick Yasuo and win. This game's easy.
It used to be like that.
Yeah, it turns out there's a bit more to it than that.
Just a little bit, just a smidgen of more things there. But we're on our 4th lobby, guys, gals, and other pals at home. And Cottontail losing on this lobby so far, winless thus far. And something else that's actually been really interesting is pockygom. 3 out of 4 lobbies has been a very fast starter. Has been our most consistent hyper roller so far as well.
That is interesting. You wonder how much that is dictated just by the champs appearing in the store and how much is a real strategic focus. Like when we were speaking in pre-show, we mentioned DQA as someone who really wanted to play aggressive early games. But if you look at the lobby right now, DQA towards the bottom, and that's been the trend throughout these lobbies. So I wonder how much the 1-cost chosen fervor is dictating the outcomes in these early lobbies, even more than player preference.
I think fervor is a really good word for that. I mean, sometimes it feels like Black Friday, right? I know that's like a purely American thing, right? But like everyone has seen those World Star videos, right, on Black Friday, and those 1-cost chosens, I kind of feel like the same thing. They unlock and the everyone just goes. The sea of people try to search for their 1-cost chosens to hyper roll, specifically those Nidalees. And so far today, only 1 hyper roll Nidalee. That we've seen so far. Kurumx tried to get there, but the Warlords just really didn't get there in time and was victimized by a bug. And so that sucks. And DQA now in 7th place has some good items, though. So if we want to move over to some, auto attack based characters, we have a Giant Slayer, we have an IE, we have a Duelist Spat, Divine Spat, Assassin Spat. This is where I have a really hard time. It's like, okay, I've got some good choices, but my choice here is a fork in the road, right? I'm going to take a path, and I can't turn back once I do.
Yeah, I think if I were in DQA's position, I'm just going to let the shop dictate my next move. And when I see that chosen, I can commit. For now, you're at least getting paid extra on your loss streak. When the time comes, you find a chosen, you have to decide, am I still trying to get this fortune payout, or do I just need to persevere? And look at all these Garens that are starting to pile up. Are we maybe headed towards a Karen game? Boop?
Oh
Is
man,
that what we're looking at?
I love you. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. I hope we have a Karen game. That would be absolutely hilarious. We actually had a Garen on Thursday get second in a lobby. It was insane. It was a Jeweled Gauntlet Titans Resolve Thornmail Garen. And the Jeweled Gauntlet stacked the Titans Resolve because every spin, right, is a new thing of damage. And he was able to get to 25 really quickly. It was really cool, that interaction. I maybe would have put a Declaw that game instead of a Thornmail. It was a magic-oriented game. A Viker won that game. But in the end, still really cool. DQA, though, running on empty on a lot of this, though, as the Karen not really going to be doing much. We also don't really have a lot of cash. We also don't have a lot of people on the bench. We should hit 20 after this because of our loss streak, but we're still looking for some good and better units.
Yeah, gonna need to find a path forward for DQA. Well, here's a potential path. Just make a 3-star Garen. Okay, I guess that's what we're doing right now. I mean, yeah, question mark. I agree. Big question mark. Sometimes the shop just tells you what you're going to do. Now you have to make a coherent game plan out of this, and I think that's going to be the real struggle. But if anyone can do it, it's the Wonderkin DQA, the prodigy of TFT.
Oh, man. Talking about some German long words with syllables. The Wunderkind of DQA.
Your pronunciation is so much better than mine. So much better.
I just have to make it, I like fancy things, so even when I talk, I like to be fancy.
Sure.
I also have very high standards. Anyway, I'm a great person to know. DQA is looking a little bit better now. Especially with some good item choices. So we even have a Dragon Soul option. We won't get there, but just wanted to share that's what the Rod and the Spat will do for. Oh, okay. So we're going to do Hextech Gunblade. Beautiful item on Katarina. That is the definition of best in slot when it comes to best in slot items. And now that Assassin Spat is looking a little bit better. Maybe even waiting for another Spat just for a Fawn could be another option here, especially since we're on the bottom of the leaderboard and might have Carousel priority, which I think
that's the right call. I think that's the right call. At this stage, I don't know that you gain all that much from your Spat. You're probably still losing. And I wouldn't say that Spat's going to make the difference at this stage. It's not going to turn the corner. So take the shot at that Fawn. That's especially when you're having like kind of a weak game. You don't really know your path yet. A Fawn could be exactly how you get back into this and get that fortune payout. So,
okay. So just to back up a little bit, I did look at that clip and Kurumx straight up got screwed. That stinks. He picked up a Chosen Brawler Shyvana, chose it, and then the Chosen went away. It still 3-starred the Shyvana though, which is very weird, but it didn't pick the Chosen Brawler. So that stinks, especially in a tournament setting. Unfortunately, it is what it is at this point in time. But moving on, hopefully Kurumx that's tough to get over, right? Because I think now is a good time to talk about the mental when it comes to having something like that happen for you.
Yeah, certainly, every game is often defined by things outside of our control, and you hate to see it happen. In an ideal world, things like this would never come up, but it is a reality of esports, and even traditional sports certainly have bad referee calls and the like, and you hate to see it happen. But as a player, all you can do is say, yes, that happened. I can't let it determine the outcome of this tournament for me. That would be a waste of my potential. It would be a waste of what I'm here for, and I just have to find a way to move on.
Still feels bad, man. Anyway, DQA feeling a little bad right now as well. Remember, Noster only needs a 7th place, and so we only need to beat one person there, but we're in a precarious situation. Let's take a look at someone we haven't really seen a lot of recently, and I think that's Pure Ryer if the stream is ready for him. So we're going to go over to pockygom first, and look at that in Italy. Giant Slayer to start. We talked about, is Giant Slayer an item to slam early on? And I think if you already have a tier 3 Garen on the board somewhere else, then yes, Giant Slayer, it's fine to slam on.
Pocky thinks yes, and there's also a tier 3 Diana out there, and I think the targets have already accumulated where this Giant Slayer can do some work. So I support it at this stage 100%.
I do too. I do too. Oh my goodness. Usually
the showdown of annoying units going at it.
I was about to say usually the Nidalee takes the W on that one, but we're gonna see the Nidalee fall down, which I think some of us are totally okay with. There is a tier 3 Diana on the board. Cottontail is on fire right now. It's like whenever we watch someone, they lose. Whenever we leave, they start winning. It is the ultimate caster curse that happened to Kurumx last game. But now, Kurumx went from 3rd to 6th in about 2 rounds. So that is pockygom. Anytime you have like an 88 or like even low 80s first place person at this point in the game, it's actually pretty close between everybody.
Yeah, the drops come fast and furious at this level for sure. And you mentioned Kurumx taking a steep drop off. Anyone in the lobby could fall victim to that at any moment.
Exactly. And in this particular meta, where when you win, you tend to win by a lot, especially with loaded dice coming into play. Loaded dice and a Nikos. Loaded dice and a Nikos. That is the dream team right there for 4-cost and 5-cost units.
Yeah, we're going to have to see how pockygom chooses to use that. Are we going to try and complete this Nidalee? Are we looking for something a little bit higher up the curve? Interesting decision. But Nidalee is fully itemized now. GA, Giant Slayer, Greensus. Not the traditional Nidalee build. Of course, you'd love to see the Spear of Shojin involved. But I think this one will still be able to do quite a bit of damage to the opposing teams.
DQA's got a Samir already at 3-5. We're feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah, why not?
Still might not beat this Nidalee because of that Giant Slayer. We'll see, though.
Yeah, a lot of spinning going on the DQA side. You've got Garen, we have Katarina, we have Samira, but unfortunately not enough to take down that team.
Yep. Just getting dizzy instead. That is unfortunate. I suffer from like the worst motion sickness in the world. I feel that.
So that was not a comp for you.
That was not a comp for me, man. Pockygom, though, playing a little bit more of a traditional comp. It might not actually seem, as DQA is playing Fortune, it might not actually seem like Pockygom has like the most amazing comp in the world. Why is it so good? Blah, blah, blah. Right? It is Warlord Nidalee with good items, right? That is always going to be... especially with those bounces, going to be doing well. You get the Vi to get the armor down. You get your spear going. You have your tank in the front line with, a Vanguard plus your Warlord buff. You're feeling pretty good. And the Chalice, this Nidalee is feeling very supported. Appreciates their friends, appreciates all of the support on the Rift, especially from Nico, if you know your lore. And Purier might be the one to be able to take him down, or not, actually, because of this GA, the spear. Oh, Yasuo has from the GA. Second GA, always better GA, friends.
Absolutely, 100%. I would love, I am so happy we went here. DQA just got the Fortune payout, and it was a big one. I think this might be the first win for DQA in this lobby. You see 6 items, a treasure trove of gold at 38 HP, so not quite as vulnerable as we saw from our last Fortune player. And now DQA can have to put together a strong team, but the pieces are there. You see, there's a fully itemized perfect item Cat. There's this 3-star Garen. So it's all about figuring out where we're going to go from here.
And 38 is much better than 10, right? And we have Wolves, right? Yep. And
Spat on the bench. So a lot of options here.
And we're leaving the orb on the board because we do not have any rooms. And this is where DQA and Cottontail, I think, are going to be separated. Look at how much more intention. DQA already had all of this on lock, has seen the items, has seen the permutations. It's like machine learning. Only 17 years old. And I know something about 17-year-olds is that they learn very, very quickly. Very malleable minds. And for TFT, DQA is doing quite the job right now. And I do like what we're doing, which is, if we can't invest in specific items and we don't have our specific carry right now, we do with the Samira, but with like the double Chalice in the front line, it's just going to keep us going. 38 HP is a good amount after a Fortune payout. Of course, you want a little bit more. Of course, you want to win after a Fortune payout.
Yeah, and just a disastrous scenario there. Nunu eating the Katarina before it could even cast, I believe. And that's the feel bads.
Nunu is the MVP of today. I would say
Thus far,
so far.
yeah,
It
I
was
would give it to
Aatrox, and now it's Nunu. It's all about the power of friendship, and 2 is better than 1. Nunus are hungry, ladies and gentlemen, and even the Nunus that we have seen would be able to take care of this tier 3 Gyarados, no problem.
I think that Pike coming into this team was a actually tremendous upgrade. I know it's just level 1 Pike, but it turned on the Slayer synergy and the Assassin synergy for the 2 carries here, and I think you could see a big difference in DQA's performance after that.
I totally agree. And so now, let's see where the rest of this lobby is going to go. I think here is where you'll see some of the lower ranked players start winning from our top ranked players and vice versa. It's kind of like that great equalizer again. The Diana, though, is going to get all 25 stacks, but now you're seeing the power of that Katarina. Katarina lives, you probably live. Katarina loses, you probably lose that round, right? That's kind of where we're at right now. We still have a spat, though, for DQA, and most likely a first choice on this carousel. So if we get another spat, DQA could potentially run away with this when all is said and done.
Yeah, I love DQA's potential right now, but it's just potential. You have to deliver on it. And like we saw there, Samira just got deleted in that fight, kind of did nothing. So have to find some ways to better empower this Samira. But if it goes online, maybe picks up like a Warlord spat, this could be a absolutely dominating unit.
Okay, this Samira, though, once that is tier 2, that's when things are really going to get crazy. Giant Slayer, though, since the rest of the lobby is running pretty tanky, champs as well, this is the perfect time to use that Giant Slayer and just look at the damage DQA is able to do. I don't really see DQA losing anytime soon, so let's go ahead and take a look over at ramblinnn, I think. Would be good to go after we're done here with DQA. His score is not 623, it's 6th, 2nd, and 3rd. If you guys need the clarification there.
Are we sure about that?
I never know anymore in 2021 or 2021 or 2020 part 2.
Wow. Do you see what just happened on that carousel?
What's up? I was having PTSD of last year. What's going on?
It was really interesting. So DQA had first action, has a spat on the bench, took the belt over the second spat to make Force of Nature.
Interesting.
Yeah, so prioritizing a Warlord Spatula over making a Fawn. And you know what? I think I like it. I think I like it with the Samira itemed up, ready to go. Making that into a Warlord, I think that's how you turn this comp into a first place comp. So,
friends at home, that right there is like the mark of a pro.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, just our assumption, right, would be other spat, go, right? Extra unit. But it might end up being more powerful to put that Warlord spat on that Samira, who already has a high top end. It gives even more of, it's like a win more situation with that Samira. As now we have our divine comps coming through. ramblinnn, though, is going to be running 6 assassin, only 3 spirit right now. You do want to try to fit in that 4th spirit eventually, because that's where your attack speed comes from.
Yep. Still only level 7, has space for it. So once we hit 8, we'll be looking to add the Kindred to this comp. But a well-itemized Diana thus far. And I like this comp against most of the rest of the lobby, with the exception probably of DQA right now.
Yeah, DQA is going to be winning quite a bit. And look at what's going on. Remember when I was like, all right, guys, the bottom side of the lobby will start picking off wins at this point in time. It's the great equalization. And look at how equal things have become. 58 as a number 1 for the lobby. That's not really something you see very often at 4-6. Like, this is pretty early for this low of a first place HP total.
No, I think it is. And I think it's the combination of like some severe low roll teams and some real high roll teams. It's the 1-star, or excuse me, the 3-star 1 cost getting online very early. And also DQA chasing that fortune dream and giving up a lot of HP early brought both the bottom end and the top end down a little bit.
Oh no, Pocky has the Samira too, though. So this Warlord Samira for DQA might have to wait a little while as Pocky's able to steal away at least 3 of those Samiras. And along with that, Diana, that's just a lot of damage coming in from Pocky. That's a scary comp.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we'll have to see how these Samiras are ultimately distributed. That'll be a big tale as to who ends up winning this lobby, I think.
Totally agree. As now we're going to arguably the most important NPC round, which are chickens. So it is 12 items is the minimum, correct, for 4 components?
I believe that is correct, yes.
Yeah, so when you get here, you can definitely count up a lot of these other players and look at Ramblin looking over at this Samira comp right now. We'll see if that's going to be able to find that Samira too, especially since pockygom's already has it. Nico's pops up and a Sunfire cape or a Shroud of Stillness on that Akali. Shroud of Stillness is not an awful item by any means in the late game. Maybe on Akali, but we already have a locket on her, so you never know.
Yeah, I think Shroud reminds me a lot of Zephyr in the context of it's a very important item for highly skilled players. And when you're doing these positioning battles, often Shroud will be determinative in how strong your opposing competition is. If you get a good Shroud on their carry, it can completely change a fight, and that's what these really excellent players are often looking for. It's a nice one.
Yeah, we do get that Shroud of Stillness, as you mentioned, and does tag most of the team. Will that be the difference maker? And it's looking like it actually could be. And, seconds are, time is economy here as well. And without that extra kind of little bit of time before Akali gets blown up by some ultimate, she was able to take down a couple units. But like you said, though, Akali has a hard time with bigger units.
Yep.
And that's exactly where she got stopped up.
Yeah, and I think Diana got caught in CC prison a little bit, just kind of stood there and got deleted, unfortunately. And you see Ramblinn's like, I've had enough of this Akali. Get out of my comp. Going to toss it aside and maybe look to itemize that talent a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So one of the best pieces of advice I ever received as a TFT player, and I say on every cast because I see it on every cast, even at a professional level, but mostly in like the diamond and below level, is don't develop relationships with your characters, right?
Yes, great advice.
There are a lot of people who will see this tier 3 Diana and say, that's my carry, right? But at the end of the game, you don't know, right? So if you get too attached to some of these characters, you might end up losing it for yourself because you just can't sell a certain character. And that kind of metaphor really got to me because I definitely do that, as DQA is actually going to fall here. And that's the risk of Fortune is, HP is a resource. And when you're playing Fortune, you're going to lose and you just don't have as much cushion.
Yeah, and Talon doing a really great job. Basically, his first run in the big time, able to produce serious results for Ramblin. Deleted a bunch of units there. Second in damage, popped off with about, I think, 6,000 damage. So a very smart, very timely shift from Ramblin to take down a very tough competitor in DQA.
5 and 2 HP on the bottom of the leaderboard. DQA and Purire could not lose another round. Ramblin, though, is going to be going up against Noster with a double locket Acel. So what that tells me is that we got a lot of vests for a team that didn't really need the vests. Yeah. And so we put it on Acel instead.
Yeah, let's see how much damage Acel can produce without the typical offensive items. It looked like more of a tickle there than the typical Acel explosion, unfortunately. 4,000 damage, got off a few casts. You want better from your Acel, but you take what you can get, and it's all about playing for what the lobby gives you.
Mm-hmm. And a big development, actually, as Purire does get eliminated in 8th place. That means that Noster has developed enough points to hit 24. So Noster will have potentially the first opportunity to qualify by winning the next lobby. The thing about Noster that I remember Bryce saying a couple weeks ago is that Noster's not really a 1st or 8th player. And so this qualifying type of situation, right, for Noster could potentially be a little bit of an issue. He might be a 40-point qualifier rather than a, lobby win qualifier, as everyone gets a static shiv during this extremely overpowered carousel.
Carousel giveth, carousel taketh away. And
sometimes it's all pawns
right now.
Sometimes it's all force of nature. Sometimes it's all thieves' gloves. And sometimes it's all static shifts. You're welcome. The Mort God has
Mort's out there trolling this tournament, pushing the static shift button. He's got his finger on the button, just jamming it.
Do it. It's like, do it. Without Emperor Palpatine, engage. Anyway, Ramblin now. looking across the boards, DQA at 5 HP does not have a 5 HP comp, in my opinion, but you never know. That Diana seemed to counter that comp quite well. Sphinx is going to be running with a pretty low HP Kale, and this Talon, though, is going to have to make some noise, and it does not do that, but it's going to go all the way to this Diana instead, and this is actually pretty close. If anyone can bring this back, it's a Kale that's not going to be looked at all. And so the executioner
Diana's alive, though. If your Diana's alive, you've got a chance, and Diana stayed alive for that entire lobby and takes it down.
I got baited by just my love of Kale.
I understand. I understand.
I mean, if you know me, my love of Kyle, but the name of Kale is on the game. Inside joke. If you know, you know. Ramblin', though, is now at 4, looking at a 4 executioner comp. I believe that was...
Yeah, who was
Sphinx?
that? Sphinx?
It could have been Cotton. No. Is it Sphinx? No, Sphinx has 3 Adept, 4 Divine, dropped his Chosen for a potential 5-cost Chosen at 9. This is actually a really interesting comp. You really don't want to be here at this moment in time when it comes to this particular power level. And he got tagged by 2 Shroud of Stillnigh, the Science guy, and he is going to lose. Not because of the Shroud of Stillness, it's just that team just doesn't really have a lot of moxie right now.
Yeah, I don't love its place in this lobby. Could quickly be heading towards the basement. You see Noster heading out in 7th place, but like you said, that was all we needed to achieve in this lobby. And I wonder if Noster took that moment to go ahead and shift strategies and try and torpedo someone else. Because I think that's the optimal play in that lobby, where you've reached your 24-point threshold, find someone else who's close to it, and do your best to destroy their team comp. And it's weird, it's very cutthroat, but these are the strategies that are going to develop amongst the really good TFT tournament players.
Mm-hmm. For those of you who are like, what do you mean? Well, when 2 mech players held hands to the bottom 8, sometimes you just want to be the mech player in 7th. Right. And if you're going to qualify in this situation, it might be good to purposely tank. Right. What is that called when you like purposely lose a game? There's like a
tanking.
Specific...
You got it.
Oh yeah. You like the Patriots in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I hate you, Tom Brady. Anyway, Sphinx now gonna be adjusting a little bit of his comp. The thing that worries me the most is just the lack of power from that back line. We have items on Xayah, which is good, especially those particular items. I believe we have 1 damage and 1 healing Hodge right now, but it's so targeting dependent. We're so lucky that no one has a target dummy right now, because that could be the difference between winning and losing when it comes to Sphinx. And again, we're just seeing how Xayah doesn't really have as much staying power as our friends. Only losing by 1 unit, though, means that we actually stay alive. In 5th place right now. DQA playing opposite of what DQA usually plays and is doing a really great job. Mad props, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Switching up the style. You love to see it, especially from a young player like DQA, finding a new way to play the game. And that's just going to be part of DQA's growth process, only going to get better and better at TFT as time goes on. You have to fear him as someone who's going to define the future of TFT. Yeah,
because in like esports time, like by the time he's 18, it will have been 3 esport years, right? So he's gonna, it's the hyperbolic time chamber right now, and the fact that he's at the peak and has been here for 2 or 3 other qualifying events means that the consistency on the ladder is pretty intense. But DQA is the example a lot of people use of ladder players versus tournament players, so there is that to think about. We actually might win this out with the Xayah with 1 more ultimate, but we shot it the wrong way. That is
another
unfortunate.
Chance with the GA, but Diana was ready.
Yeah, for that Sphinx Diana, just a little too strong. 1 cost unit, by the way, as we actually have our top 3 right now. And let me ask you, though, because I'm actually okay with the 1 cost units being so strong, right? I think it's just another style of play for TFT that we can explore. And all of my friends who have started on the set absolutely love it. So what's your kind of opinion on that as I kind of put you on the mic here?
Yeah, it's hard for me to envision this game without Chosens. Now, I understand that people are going to hear that and some heads are going to explode because the Chosen mechanic is certainly controversial, especially against when it comes to the top tier of players. The way Chosen's work as like an on-ramp and some guardrails, I think is such good game design. And if you know, my background's in other competitive card games, and there's so much done in those games to make sure people are pushed in the right direction. Yeah. Chosen feels like that to me. And I love this set. Set 4.5 has been my favorite set thus far. Obviously only 2 to deal with, but I do support the Chosen mechanic. I get the gripes, but I'm for it.
Cool. Yeah, I think I get it too, right? But I'm not necessarily the person that is affected by, that top end Chosen mechanic play, right? So you got to take those, opinions on itself, right? Like I'm not low ranked by any, any means necessary, but I'm not Challenger, right? And even the difference between Challenger and Grandmaster is there, right? Yeah. And those problems are very specific, right? And you see it in almost every game. And I think TFT is just now entering that space of separation of competitive and casual.
Yes.
But this is as competitive as you can get. Both players potentially one away from losing. Pockygom has no Kale in the back line, gets taken down by the Diana. That is a huge deal, a huge loss from Pockygom, but that Diana might not have enough left to continue winning here. This Diana has actually lost a couple times already as Pocky is going to win out this lobby. Noster gets that 7th, and that's actually most likely going to be the most important thing for a couple players here, as I believe 2, maybe even 3 people have hit that 24-point threshold through this round. That was a really close lobby. That's the second one. So, Bryan, anything breaking expectations so far before we look at these scores?
I think I expected more from DQA after that massive fortune payout. It kind of felt like even as we got to the late game, despite all those items in that infusion of gold, the team comp didn't really accelerate to the levels I thought it was going to. I thought it was just going to be a clear runaway, and certainly you can still be countered by the correct opposing composition, but you should have a significant edge against everyone. I actually thought DQA's comp ended up about even with the rest of the lobby by the time we got to the end game. And it's interesting because it was a Diana comp at the top end. So showing the power again of those one-cost Chosens, being able to invest fully in them and coming out with a large performance. But it'll be interesting to see how many players we have live as we go into this next round to just go ahead and win this whole event.
3 players have gotten over the 24-point threshold. So that means if Pocky, DQA, which is actually terrifying, and Noster, if any of them win this next lobby, right, they will qualify. And we're actually seeing that kind of possibility of potentially having less points and winning. So like if DQA gets first and Pockygom gets second, DQA would have less points but would win the day. So if we get there, I just kind of want to prep everyone because that can be weird to see. The other way to win is if no one of those top 3 make it and win, they have to get 40 points first. So we have 3 people qualified. Sphinx, ramblinnn, and Cottontail will most likely qualify on the next round. So they might work together to try to take down the top 3 here, as again, 3 people have qualified for the final step of winning today's qualifier.
Yeah, and got to give props to Pockygom taking down 2 lobbies in a row against incredibly tough competition. I just shoot over to Pockygom's recent games. It's been kind of a tough run lately and not really a sterling performance. If we're looking at recent 20 matches, average rank of 4.3. So, not awful, but not really shining in this one cost meta that has developed. But here in tournament play against some of the best in NA, really shining in these last 2 matches.
Peaking at the right time, and whenever you come to a qualifying event, that's exactly what you want to be doing. You might not be the best coming in, but you could be the best during the day, and we'll find out who qualifies after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is the Challenger Series on giantslayer TFT. This is the one of the best ways to get into the NATFT World Championship qualifiers, as well as the main event itself. I've been Boop here with Bryan. This is the B&B cast once again. How's everyone doing there at home? Throw it in the chat. Tell me how your day is going. Bryan, how's today going for you?
I'm having a blast thus far, Boop. I am so thrilled to be part of this TFT tournament. I think the intricacies of tournament play have been really illuminating for me coming from ladder play. I love seeing how the lobby is reacting to trends. And I want to see how that changes now that we have our first players in striking distance of winning this whole thing. We have crossed that 24-point threshold, and a win here could seal the deal for 3 players.
Yep, 3 different players could potentially seal the deal. I know I have a favorite. I bet you guys could all pick it based off of how I've said about these last players. By the way, I like your hoodie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think we both look pretty fresh tonight, I gotta say.
Yeah, I totally agree. Green is our color, you know? So next time, this is going to be a thing. You're looking good, man. But anyway, other players looking good. Like we said, 3 players in that 24-point space, and it is going to be a DQA, pockygom, and Noster. If any one of those 3 win this lobby here, they will qualify. So the rest of the lobby is going up against those 3. A couple other people very close to that 24 points. I believe Sphinx and Kurumx are the next ones on that list, along with Cottontail following right after. So we could be here for another couple lobbies, but this could be the last one. What's your gut telling you, Bryan? Like, are we going to get another lobby after this, or are we done?
I want to see if DQA has that killer instinct. I want to see if DQA can turn it on, be that feast or famine gamer as we know them, and can just close out this lobby right now, shut the door, and take home that victory.
I totally agree with you. That's exactly what I would think too. And the other thing that is really exciting about it is if you're in a position where you need to first place, you can't dilly-dally around with, these spirit comps, right? You're not going to win. And so you need to get to that tier 3 reroll comp potentially, or be the first one to get to those kills. So you're going to, I think, play really aggressively. Something that happens moderately frequently is once they get over to the 24-point spread, they get like 8th and then 7th right after, because they are playing so hard with that 1st or 8th mentality, because you have to win if you want to qualify before that 40 points.
Right. Exactly right. And the adaptations of these players as we progress through a different stage of the tournament, it has been fascinating. I'm going to keep a close eye on DQA and how aggressive they want to be in the early stages of this lobby.
And honestly, I swear I cast a DQA in set 2, I think, which feels like lifetimes ago. And he was playing exactly the same way. Today is the biggest increase in kind of late game and mid game power I've ever seen DQA have. It might be meta dependent, right? But I got to give some credit to him. And that's why I think all signs are kind of pointing that way. And it'd be insane to see a 17-year-old qualify, because I believe a 16-year-old won Worlds this last season from Europe. 16, 17, definitely under 18. So it's not out of this world for these Wunderkinds to sorry everyone from Germany, to show up and absolutely destroy their opponents regardless of their life experience.
I love seeing people less than half my age and 10 times better than me at TFT.
It's great,
just
isn't it?
Such a good ratio.
It is so fun. It's great to know that you yourself have failed in so many ways.
Absolutely. My life is a constant reminder, especially when I step forth on the TFT battlefield, just always having that shown to me.
I had my first ever the esports industry, I'm sure is very, and everyone at home is very young, right? So I'm 30 and I'm ancient in the esports world. It's changing a little bit as we're kind of going on, but you tend to hang out with younger 19, 20-year-old kids just starting out in the esports world. And for the first time in my life, I was like, you're just better than me in all aspects. It's your reaction, your brain is better than mine. I have too much life experience to react as quickly. I mean, some first-person shooters give me motion sickness now. What's going on?
I have to tell you, as someone who's very quickly closing in on 40 years old, get used to that feeling, because you're going to feel it more and more throughout your days.
Yeah. Hopefully when COVID is done, I'll be able to attend all my friends' second marriages by that time.
Yep, those should also be scheduled.
Yeah, exactly. Around the 34 to 38 period. Hopefully not mine. Hopefully I'll still be on the first one. John might have some words with me after this. But, Pure hey, does that joke from earlier make sense now, friends? Pure now is going to have a lot of work to do. So he's kind of the, I would say, spoiler of the crew right now. So if he's able to pick off a win, is he going to be able to qualify? I actually don't think so. Maybe, but we'll keep other people from qualifying. So we really, really want to see, if you're a friend of Pure, if you're a friend of a fan of Kurumx or ramblinnn or Cottontail, you do not want to see Pocky, DQA, or Noster win this lobby. And so I would love to see where Pure is going, because we are seeing that Locket of the Iron Solari on that Wukong. And something else that I love seeing pros do, because it's like so natural to them, is it's okay to only have 3 people in your Locket row, right? You do not need to find all 5 people in the row. Like, that is a really great way to throw around sometimes.
Yeah, it was a lesson I certainly had to learn as I got comfortable with TFT. I would line everyone up and be like, well, why did my Janna get deleted? Well, idiot, you put her in the front line. It's kind of clear why she had a hard time with that one. But like you mentioned, just absolute second nature for Pariah, correctly leaving back the Janna out of the front line and just letting the units who most benefit from that Locket buff collect it.
DQA rolling right now, actually, at level 1, I think.
Okay, talking about aggression, right? I mean, like, put together an early board, I guess.
Yeah, and it's maybe not going to work. I mean, the thing is we're facing a Kindred, right? Kindred is, in my opinion, the best early game unit in the game. Can have no items. I think has a base 300 damage on that ult. Most units have about 400 health to spare once that Kindred ult goes live, plus the Grievous for like early Siphoner comps. It is so good. That's why Chosen Kindred early in the game is such a strong comp. You can actually win a lobby with a Kindred 3 too, with best in slot items. But apparently DQA is going to get another spat. So DQA gets that spat, and the spat is a really great way to win a lobby, friends, especially with those Samiras, even those Elderwood Asols, right? DQA knows exactly how to win a lobby, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, look, I mean, like, there's something different about the way DQA is playing here, right? Like, again, we find DQA at the bottom of this lobby, again, getting a spat. Like, I don't know that that's necessarily what we're going for when we're putting together these team comps.
Dude, Brian.
But it's a pattern.
It's the same items as last game. It is exactly the same items that he started off with last game. That's actually a little crazy.
Yeah, that's a wild start.
And DQA had made that really slick call of leaving a fawn on the carousel and picked up a Warlord spat and was able to get second or third. Thank you, 6,233, to help him get to that 24 points. So we're probably going to lose out. I would probably build a Nunu comp if I was in their position, based off of the success of that comp and kind of like the trends of this lobby so far. The 2 Nunus we've seen, I believe both won, and have been, and if they haven't, have been a 2 or 3 thing, especially that Nunu 3, and with all that hyper rolling, and now an Elderwood chosen, that could be the direction we go. How
about a 3-star Fiora for pockygom at 2-6? Nice and early there, certainly in that hyper roll territory, putting together his 3-star potential carry. We'll have to see how itemization is going on that side. Yeah, and we're going to take a look at Yasuo chosen, so could see a really powerful early game from pockygom. Interesting to see if you can convert that into a big win.
I believe Fiora has been in every TFT set. It'd be so weird without her. It's like, did you play Hearthstone?
I do play Hearthstone. I'm legally required to play Hearthstone because I am a competitive card gamer. So
that's true.
We all at least know Hearthstone to some extent.
I feel like Fiora is like Argent Squire, right? Just like one of those just like classic 1-cost units, right? That make it into a lot of decks. You're like old school Mana Worm, right? Where it's just like, you put it in, right? It just belongs here. Like Mage without Mana Worm is weird. And so here, it's like the same thing. TFT without Fiora is weird.
I have to tell you, one of the real sticking points for me as a new TFT player, I want to go back and experience these old sets so badly. I just love understanding games. I love seeing how they're set up. I wish there was some kind of rotating queue where we were able to experience old sets. Mort, if you're listening, rotating queue, please.
I'm really excited for Mort's plans for set 5, to be completely honest with you. But we are at the beginning of set 4.5. I'm also excited for Turbo Mode. Have you heard of that one?
No, I have not.
Turbo Mode is going to be a TFT game that's for 14 to 20 minutes instead of like the 20 to 35 minutes.
Okay. Sounds great for mobile.
Yeah, and playing on the toilet.
Mm-hmm. Another great use of your gaming time, yes.
Exactly. If you're a mobile developer and you're not considering toilet time as part of your business plan,
you failed.
You are not doing it right. Press 1 in the chat if you play TFT on the toilet. Anyway, DQA is 1. Is now messing with that spat and that sword. You have something to say, Brian?
I mean, just a really swift turn of fortune for DQA. Found Shyvana, some really nice Shyvana items, and also a nice early Cho'Gath as well. So we're packing 4 brawlers, going to pick up Rakan to add 3 Elderwood to the mix. And I like the way this is coming together for DQA, still with that spat in reserve too.
Oh, you brave chat participators. I love you. Thanks for that one. And so I think maybe the next carousel would be a good time to come back to DQA, as we did move away from an Elderwood chosen Lulu earlier, but we're still keeping the option for that brawler comp earlier. And that 8 brawler comp can win a lobby. Got second the last time that we saw it. So let's go ahead and move over to another one of our potential winners, which is Pocky. Oh, Noster. Cool. Noster 11 is another really good example of someone who is very consistent in play, right? Not today, actually, but usually is pretty consistent in that top 4 and has a hard time winning out on some of these lobbies. Barely missed out, I believe, last week, getting a second place. That's right, Noster. The last time we were here, Noster and Ramkev were the top 2, and they both only needed a win, and they ended up facing off against each other with like 4 HP or something at the very last thing, and Noster did lose out on that last 1v1. I believe that is the same person. So Noster, in terms of redemption arc, needs to win this lobby as well.
Yeah, would love to cast aside those demons. Look at what's going on, too, for Noster. It's the headline story of this particular patch. It's that Nidalee already on 3 stars, picked up the Spear of Shojin. Let's see how it fares against DQA's big brawlers. No problem for Nidalee, able to easily carve through those big bodies.
Those brawlers will get stronger, though, once we do have our Cho'Gath, once we do have our set specifically. He did not have a chosen brawler, so we are
correct
a little behind, but sitting at 72 HP with this comp is actually a little low. You do tend to see the brawler and the Elderwoods take a little bit more victories in the early game, but we're still fine at 72, especially since the power level at the top is so spread out. That will trickle down eventually and even things up. But right now, if I'm one of our 3 winners, 2 of them are at 98 and 94 HP and on fire right now. So this is looking insane. And look at how much they're all rolling compared to before, especially Noster, right? We already are 1 Garen away from Karen 3.
Yeah, just wants to make those 3-star units, and I love the aggressiveness. Pockygom, similar success. Look at that Fiora loaded up with items, including Luden's Echo. Fiora Luden's is a cool setup. Lots of damage coming out of Fiora right now, and this is that shift in duelists we talked about with Fiora as a carry as opposed to the Yasuo.
Okay, so Fiora with Luden's is the build, in my opinion, in the early game. It's almost exactly like old school Ziggs or any like machine artillery type of Luden's holder. So that is like Teemo, or I think Teemo is probably, I don't know, in terms of Luden's holders, Teemo is probably the one I see the most right now. But yeah, Fiora is really good with Luden's, guys. Really good.
Yeah, showing a lot of damage there. And that duelist comp looks to be very much online for Pocky.
And that is scary for the rest of the lobby. But what Pocky needs to make sure to happen is that he wins the lobby sooner rather than later, because Duelist will hit that. Yep, Duelist will hit that top end much quicker than a lot of than Warlords, for example, because Warlords have those 5 rounds to develop even more power. And some of your late game Warlords, you don't even have them for 5 rounds. So in terms of the ceiling, Pockygom, once they get there as quickly as possible, do 15, damage to every single person he faces, develop like a 50-point HP lead, which actually is happening. So, yeah. Unfortunately for him, there are also 3 other people who are doing well.
Yeah, extremely bifurcated lobby. You see the top end doing really well, 4 players over 90. Sorry, that SAT training comes out.
I know, right? Comes with age, guys.
All the lawyer prep.
The more age, the more syllables. Yep.
Right. But you see, 490s in the top end, and then the rest of the lobby, all the way down to Cottontail at only 36 HP right now. Has a nice Shyvana chosen, though. A couple of decent items, though. Let's see if that can pull out of the spiral. 6 brawlers, too.
Mm-hmm. And
it's a fortune game, too. 8 losses.
Yep. And we want to win at 3-5 or 3-6. And
Absolutely.
That's why you're seeing this Shyvana on the board right now. Will they be able to cash out? It's actually looking like a pretty friendly matchup in terms of cashing it out.
I think so.
And it looks like that's going to happen. It's going to happen slowly, but it's going to happen regardless. So we'll definitely stick around onto Cottontail and see what this cash out's going to be. This is perfect timing as well. But yeah, 36 HP again. All of our fortune players around 30 HP when they end up cashing out, and it has never been enough. So hopefully this time it will be for Cottontail because he needs this win.
Yeah, half the battle is winning that fortune round and getting this big payout. The other half, and arguably more important part of the battle, is how you form your team comp afterwards. And let's see how Cotton does it. Can Cotton succeed where some of our other players have not succeeded? You know why I like Cotton's position for this fortune setup is he got there with the Shyvana chosen already in tow. So there's a pretty clear path forward for this comp. And you've got your chosen already. You just pick up those brawlers. You're going to be able to leverage all these additional items. All those additional Nico's helps are going to make your units accelerate. Like you could have a 2-star Olaf if you wanted right now, or you could wait and complete your 3-star Shyvana. I like both those options. And I think Cottontail's in a really good spot to come from behind in this lobby.
Something else that is an option is picking up a singular set, using both Nikos on that set to get to that Nikos 2, set 2, using both of those Nikos as Noster actually will fall. Very, very interesting here is that Shyvana survives with full health. It didn't really seem like that much had changed, but it really had. And the unfortunate thing for DQA in this certain scenario is that 5 of these units are units that DQA wants as well. And so Cottontail's kind of doing what Noster did last game, which is just like tank someone else. And if you take DQA out, all you need is 2 people to fail, right? And that's much better chances for you specifically. And so now it's up to 2 other people like Sphinx to try to get the win over Pocky. But unfortunately for them, Pocky and Noster are both in 1st and 2nd place right now.
Yeah, so Cottontail doing a good job of torpedoing one of the people you need to torpedo. That's DQA. But like you mentioned, those other 2 shooting towards the top of the lobby. It looks like Noster just completed a 3-star Garen. So more and more 1-cost units coming online. Would have loved to see a cloak there for Cottontail in that last round of creeps. Could have then completed the Runaan's Hurricane on the Shyvana. I think that's what we're waiting for. But a bevy of items on the bench. Just got to decide what we want to do with them.
I mean, we're 2 rounds in and winning without the items. So
right.
I mean, we can be pretty patient here. I mean, we've talked about in the past, like how important it is to have intention and choice when it comes to these items. But what Cottontail was able to do is take the macro of the entire lobby and say, you know what? I only need the items on the Shyvana right now. If I lose, maybe I put items on. But right now, even if I lose, I'm not losing by a lot. So might actually end up winning this out, depending on where this ult goes onto that Viger, and if this Lulu is going to be able to 1v1 this Maokai, which he might, by the way.
Yeah, I like Lulu's odds here, I think.
All right, and the pillow fight is going to end with Lulu in the lead. Cottontail will fall Pocky with that tier 3 unit at 2-4, 2-5, right, with that Fiora.
Yeah, it's extremely
It's going to
early.
continue developing that lead. And again, it's like you said, bifurcated, right? It is Pocky and Noster and Sphinx, and then everyone else right now.
Yeah, gonna have to develop a strategy from the bottom tier here is Cottontail. But like, I think what was so unique about that fortune payout is that the fortune payout wasn't the spike. Cottontail spiked before the fortune payout and got the fortune payout because was able to put together the spike of the chosen Shyvana. So that's why you've seen a little bit less urgency, a little bit more patience in assigning those items. And I think correctly so. I think that's how you're going to play for first place, which is really what Cottontail needs at this stage. Like at the bottom of our tournament board, you need a big result here. And I like the more controlled approach.
has shown that they can win a lobby. Unfortunately, that's been the only good game so far. We did get 6 points on that last lobby, but with 2 8th places, it is going to be a long day for Cottontail if they are able to make it through. Noster getting a Teemo 2. That's actually, even at 4-3, a pretty nice little jump. That blind and that poison going to last a little bit longer and do a little bit more damage. I'm assuming that there's probably another sharpshooter there. And looking at the bottom of the leaderboard, we see some duelists. We have our brawler players as well.
Yeah, there's duelists doing well. There's 2 brawlers doing bad. It's hard to say a lot about, are they forcing each other into different angles. I mean, we've seen pockygom's comp just come together extremely quickly. Going to get another look at it now as we see that carry Fiora. Still looking to put together a 3-star Yasuo, a bigger Jax. Wonder how aggressively we're rolling at this point and how aggressively we're trying to get to a higher level total.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to. I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at that Vi and the fact that apparently she was facing Medusa the entire time and just stood there. Yeah, just stood there and ate all of the damage with full mana. That's always like the worst part. It's just like, all I need is for the CC to end. All I need is for the CC to end, and I'm dead. Awesome. And Cottontail, very close to dying.
All of us, be us TFT players or League of Legends players, know the pain of permastun and just waiting to cast that ult while you're chain CC to death.
Yep. And just like on the Rift, your team is going to fail, but the other team is going to have that kindred that, avoids the Nidalee, spear and then kills your Nidalee instead. My kindred will jump into the team and die immediately. That's how, that's how it goes. If you're a high level player, usually it goes the right way. I just feel like this is a late lantern, by the way, everyone. So there's going to be a lot of items on it too. That's a nice little double loaded dice.
Gonna get right to it. It looks like throwing them on the Shyvana. There's 2 copies. Only one more needed. Has the Nico's ready to go.
Yep. We need 2. There
gonna
we
just
go.
Take it the easy way.
Yep. We are gonna get loaded dice, guys. And now, what are we gonna move on to with the spat? The spat's actually a little awkward with the items that we have right now. We could maybe do an Elderwood.
Don't see a great use for it as it stands right now. Looks like it's going to be a mage hat on the Nunu. Okay. Well, we've said Nunu has been MVP, so
true new. As DQA is looking a lot better now, but that tier 3 Shyvana is going to fall, and we just saw the beauty of Dragon Soul. Remember, what is a team comp's counter usually? Its own thing, and that's exactly what we saw there with Dragon Soul eating through that Shyvana health.
Yeah, just not enough damage output quickly enough to overcome the Dragon Soul buff. And I wonder about the Mage Hat. Like, Mage Hat Nunu's fine. I don't really have any objection to that. But did it upgrade your team enough that you weren't supposed to take the chance at Raptors to see what you could pull from there? See if you could find a better spat, or maybe even a second spat and get to a Fawn. Never know.
I mean, a late game Fawn is a huge power spike. That's when you can put in your random 5-cost unit. You can put in your Ornn for some items, right? So, and with these HP totals, especially if you're Sphinx at Noster or Pocky, an Ornn will get you 2 items most likely.
Right.
So Pocky will fall, and this is exactly when we would expect our hyper roll comps to struggle. Kurumx, though, is going to be running a Kalista. I love Kalista. She can be so strong, but she is one of those units that will jump right off the cliff, right? If you do not tier 3 her.
No, big feast or famine unit. I am quite partial to Kalista myself, but we've all played the games where Kalista just feels like an absolute blank, just getting absolutely blown up over and over, and it's super frustrating. But you get a Runans out there, you get those really high duelist numbers. Start looking at 6 duelist, or maybe even high roll into 8 duelist. Kalista can just take down team fights all on her own.
Really intrigued to see what pockygom and his nice amount of HP is going to be able to do here. We're going to make that Morellos. We have a Kale on the board along with some Divines, and so we're going to go ahead and finish up a couple units. A lot of different ways we can go here, especially with the fact that we do not have a Chosen. And here's that Morgana Chosen, one that you say everyone should think about, especially
6
with the Morellos. And a Morellos on the board.
I really like where this comp has ended up. Selling the Yasuo is a risky maneuver, right? You've invested a lot into this Fiora and certainly spent some time trying to improve that Yasuo. but look at what you ended up with. I think you might have something special on your hands with this Morgana. And the Talon, too, also well itemized to start off with. So that six enlightened buff really going to pay big dividends immediately.
And the Blackpool is going to be able to tag almost everybody there. The Nidalee is going to keep up for a little while longer. This is going to be pretty close. Will the Gianna be able to beat the Garen 3? Yes, they will. What an underdog surprise. That's like a 12 seed beating a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, friends, as the Gianna going to beat up on Karen.
Big Gianna performance there. And I think all this comp needs, I really want to make the Siphoner synergy. I think that's what will move this into the next gear and allow this Morgana to just absolutely take over matches. I don't know if Pocky's going to be able to find the space for it. Maybe, a late Swain floats into this comp, or maybe you just stand put. Maybe you think this is how you're best suited to win. It'll be interesting to see how Pocky shapes this late game.
All right, we did get rid of the Jax 2, so we are committed to this Enlightened comp. We have pivoted, and this is how you want to try to win as ramblinnn with a Jarvan 3 and Ionic Spark. That is not something to scoff at, especially with a Samira 2 in the backline as well. No Deathblade on that Samira 2, though, so Samira tends to struggle in the late game without a Deathblade, even with these items. So we'll see if that's going to matter, but man, ramblinn's comp is looking a little insane right now.
Yeah, more defensive Samira to be sure, but a defensive Samira is still pretty scary, quite frankly.
We are 3-2 Morganas away. There is that Siphoner. Okay, so we're not looking at the... We're going to go for Morgana 3 instead, which is one of the strongest units in the game. We do have a loaded dice as well, so we could potentially loaded dice Morgana and then use a Nikos. We only need 2 more Morganas for Morgana 3, and I like that we're not rushing on that loaded dice because we can wait for some eliminations, assumingly at 54 HP.
Now, a lot of patience being shown by Pocky, and you love to see it. Just trying to get that unit on board. If you had to pick 3-star Morgana, 3-star Kale, which do you think is more likely to carry the lobby for you?
I would probably say Kale. You don't think so?
I think it's Kale, but I think it's closer than you would believe, because that 3-star Morgana can be an absolute house. Now, granted, a lot of it depends on your build. It depends how you're itemized. All those things come into play. I guess I'm just a Morgana fanboy. Like, I love singing Morgana's praises. I think there's so many good comps you can build with her.
I totally agree. DQA, though, running out of time. And what Noster has done here is actually really great for Noster, which is, you know what? I'm going to set myself up, right? It's all set up right now for Noster. Has about a 2 loss advantage on every single person in the lobby. And so that means we can develop economy. We can look for units for 2 rounds longer. Sphinx is doing exactly what Sphinx needs to do in this particular situation, but we are running out of time. 47 HP for second place, ramblinnn at 8, but ramblinnn, I think, has arguably the strongest comp in the game right now. So a lot of things might happen. What Noster really needs, I think, is ramblinnn to get taken out by a counter comp or a mirror comp, and Noster can feel a little bit more comfortable with things, because just by that HP total, you can assume that someone like Cottontail, Purire, and DQA might get eliminated. Even Kurumx might get eliminated by the time Noster gets close, and Noster's still winning. So we're in the end game here. We might finish here today, and I would love to see Noster finally, shut up a lot of people that say, he's a top 4 player, not really a top 1 player, and getting a top 4 in this game. But with this talent too, along with the fact that a Morg 3 is potentially here, things. Last Whisper, IE.
Yeah, perfect itemization for that Talon. I think that was a significant upgrade for this comp. Let's watch Talon go to work now on that backline, just deleting an ASOL.
Man, these Talons doing work on the backline carries, but the Olaf, though, going to take him down. And that's the thing about Olaf. You got to try to get him down earlier rather than later. And now our hyper roll Nidalee, and this is where, again, losing by 1 unit, 62 HP, that's great for Noster, right? Has survived Cottontail, and if he loses by 1 unit for the next 3 rounds, we'll probably beat ramblinnn, we'll probably beat Kurumx, right? But what this shows is that Noster's comp is Warlord, and ramblinnn has most of those Warlords on his board. So we really, if you are a Noster fan, you really want ramblinnn to lose and put all of those Jarvans and stuff back in the pool.
Here is my concern for Noster. Sphinx already has a 3-star Xayah. terrifying unit. Absolutely juiced. Going to be able to just carry some of these matches on its own. We're very close to Pocky being able to make a 3-star Morgana. Is Noster going to be able to find enough to resist those units in the late game? And I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, as Pocky is going to fall by Purire, and this bottom part of the lobby is showing up all of a sudden, and that's actually good news for people like Noster, especially since if, someone else, he does not have the strongest comp right now, right? I think Noster is going to need some help from the lobby to make that happen for him, but he could potentially get that help. ramblinnn could lose by, this set, for example, by Purire, right? Purire could lose by someone else, and the Noster might be able to 1v1 and pick up all the units they need at that point in time because of this HP differential. Remember, HP is what we consider part of your economy. And the other thing about pockygom is we hit that Morgana. We are feeling fine, but we're waiting so long for our loaded dice at this point that we might run out of time, right? Like, we're exhibiting patience because that's what we should do, but we might get it the old-fashioned way instead.
Looks like it's go time now. Not going to hit the Morgana. Only one Morgana away here with that Zeke's at the ready. Find Zillion too. That's a nice upgrade, but would have loved to see that Morgana come. Gonna just sell
everything except.
Yep. Unfortunate use of the loaded dice there, but there were significant upgrades here. 2-star Lisa and 2-star Zillion, nothing to scoff at.
I don't know why he loaded dice to the Talon and not the Morgana, because there are more assassins than there are siphoners.
Yep.
So
only 4 siphoners.
Might have been a little bit too quick on the draw there. I mean, looking back, that might be the difference between winning or losing this lobby, right? That is where I think nerves come in, and that is very unfortunate, as Noster will end up losing to Pocky, and the lead has vanished.
Yeah, Sphinx now within striking. That 3-star Zaya did just take a loss there. I'm curious who Sphinx was taken down by. Really fascinating development at the end of this lobby, and 2 people in striking distance. Actually, DQA is still there as well. DQA playing 9 Dragon Soul last I looked. It's been a minute since we headed over to that comp, but can you put together a big win streak down at that meager 4 HP life total?
I think you can in this particular meta, especially with a lot of these other comps starting to fall apart. Noster is one of those comps. The Karen in the front line is going to be the thing that breaks through the opponent's front line, but we've had a Samira 2 on the board for forever, and so we're still waiting for that. And this is not even the strongest Warlord comp that we have. That belongs to ramblinnn, so we just need to pick up a win somewhere in order to try to make this happen, and it's not going to happen here.
No, DQA with 9 Dragon Soul just carves through that entire comp.
Oh my god, this is as close as it gets, Brian, as ramblinnn is going to fall. That is Noster's greatest thing to happen to him in this lobby, other than the fact that he's poor. And so now that all of those warlords are back, we have about 2 rounds to try to bring them back. Pocky is still in striking distance. So we have all three members of our winning 24-pointers right now, along with Purire and Sphinx. It's going to be up to those 2 players with 6 and 3 HP respectively to play spoiler here, or else this will be our last lobby. Whoever Sphinx faces next is going to make a lot of things happen here, as Purire will be the first one to go over to Noster. Will Noster be able to eliminate this spoiler? This Karen in the front line is actually doing a lot of damage, but it's going to have to go through the Shyvana in the back line. And because of that grievous wounds, it's looking like it's going to happen, Brian. This set is going to throw the game, potentially. Oh, no.
So close for the set.
That set. Report the set, dude. Report the set. That is brutal. Oh, God, I'm in pain.
Look, there's all kinds of variants in TFT. Sometimes it manifests in the most obvious way possible, and Set just going off and doing his own thing, kind of dooming maybe not just the chances of his controller, but the entire tournament, because now Pocky and Noster left with the top 2 life totals in the lobby.
MVP Sand Soldier. Man, that's probably the most value I've ever seen a Sand Soldier get.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that set did that. I cannot believe the set solo ulted the Sand Soldier. That is, I'm still wrapping my head around it.
Just a personal vendetta against that Sand Soldier in particular.
Exactly. And so we have two people at single digit HP, Noster at 20, and there is that life total coming into play now. And we're already seeing the benefit for Noster that ramblinnn was actually the one to fall. This Garen, though, is going to get kicked out by the Lee Sin.
Big kicks.
Yeah, huge kick from that Lee Sin, but it's not going to take that Karen out, as the Nidalee is going to be having his back, and is Noster going to be able to eliminate someone else due to a little bit of luck? And it looks like
that Nidalee
the answer is
defense.
This is it. Noster is going to win if this Garen takes down this Janna, which it should once we start spinning. Here we go. Sphinx
One
fell.
more revive.
Yeah, Pocky is going to fall. It could not have gotten closer than that, as Noster 11 wins today's qualifier in the 5th lobby. In my opinion, was the best player of today. And so the best player, in my opinion, wins it out pretty dominantly, actually. When, push comes to shove, Sphinx couldn't finish the deal and play spoiler there at the end. We were going to have a Pocky and or a Noster win, but we are done for today with Noster qualifying. That is a big deal for Noster. Excited to get that interview here in just a second. Before we get there, Bryan, what do you got to say about Noster?
What a dramatic end to our tournament between the set misfiring and the last gasp effort from the Janna. It all came down to that final battle. And I agree with you. I think Noster played phenomenal today, and there was a very deserving champion at the end of the day. Even if my pick didn't come through, got to give props to Noster 11. Really understood this meta extremely well, played a diverse range of comps. Props to you, Noster.
And a lot of people complain about the meta, a lot of people complaining about a lot of things in TFT right now. But one thing that I will never complain about is a close game. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
And that last lobby was as close as you could get. The double elimination. And what's actually crazy to think about is the fact that Noster had a 20-point HP lead throughout the entirety of that game. And what did he win with? 20 HP.
And you called it very early on, Boop. You said how critical that lead was going to be and how he's going to have to utilize that tempo and use it to get to the point where some warlords got released into the pool, use all the timings, and it was really beautifully played.
Not going to lie, I actually kind of called that perfectly.
I agree with you. I agree.
No, enough about me and more about how close that game was, because one, you got to give props to all 3 of our 24-pointers. DQA got eliminated a little earlier, but actually, if you really took note of that DQA game, I actually thought he played that pretty clean. It was unfortunate that he shared his comp with someone else and didn't develop a 30-point lead to start the game, right? That's kind of like the difference there, where Noster was sharing the Warlords of ramblinnn, but he had a 20 HP economy versus DQA's 0 HP economy when it came to that brawler comp.
Yeah, DQA made a very wise shift, I think, especially in the context of the rest of the lobby. Like getting into that very heavy Dragon Soul comp. We talked about Dragon Souls maybe feeling a little memey, but in the situation where you're up against brawlers, you're up against these big life totals, Dragon Souls can really pay dividends. And we saw it manifest for DQA. Like DQA was down and out pretty early on in that lobby and really shuffled his comp to get back into a place where it was competitive right up until the end. I was just so impressed by all of our players play today. They showed so much diversity, so much range, so much willingness to just take what lobbies were giving and adapt to what their opponents were doing on the fly.
And here are the final standings. And it ended up happening. Pocky did end up getting the most points, but does not qualify. Noster is going to be that person instead, hitting 24 points and then winning the lobby at the earliest convenience of them. As Pocky and DQA will end up finishing out that top 3. Sphinx, 1 point away from that 3rd place total. ramblinnn, Cottontail, Kurumx, and Purire to follow things out. I did hear the intro for the Discord thing. Noster, are you there?
Yeah, hello.
How's it going? Congratulations. What a day for you. This is probably some of the cleanest play I've seen from you really in a long time. Or do you think it's meta dependent, or were you just kind of feeling it today?
I think I've been slowly improving through the first set. I don't know. I was feeling it today though. Definitely a little bit.
Brian, go.
Is there a moment really in today's play where you were particularly proud of an adaptation you made, or is there a particular comp that you thought really shined and displayed your understanding of this 4.5 meta?
I like the last game, And I like that last game because you usually only play Nidalee reroll if you like have the Nidalee chosen, but if you have Garen, I think you can play it. So I think it's fine. So yeah, that
Do you
one.
know what we're calling Carrie Garen now?
What?
Karen. The Karen
Oh
comp.
boy.
It's great. It's great. It's law that you have to say it now because I've told you. Anyway, Bryan, any more questions for Noster, our champion today?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think this says about the future of your participation in TFT tournaments? Are you excited to be able to take this qualification and try and build something more with it and really establish yourself as a fixture of the scene as maybe the future of North American TFT? Do you have those kind of grand ambitions when it comes to this game?
I mean, hopefully. I said to myself at the start of this set that my goal wasn't really to like become or like really get to the top of the ladder. It was just to become like a solid player, like well rounded, and then I was really gonna try and push for like top like 5 regularly next set. So
And so now
yeah.
that you've qualified, what does this mean in terms of your like preparation for the next step? Like the ladder is still like a bragging right situation for you, but it's all about the world championships now and getting there. How are you going to change your training regimen? I know you play with DQA in them. Are you going to keep kind of hyperbolic time chambering with those with your buds?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just grinding out the ladder usually. Maybe like a smaller tournament here or there, but yeah, probably just mostly grinding the ladder. Um, yeah.
Cool. Bryan, any final words for our champ today?
No, I just want to say congratulations, and it was a pleasure to watch you play TFT today, and I wish you the best of luck when you do your best to represent North America.
All right, thank you for
Oh wait,
hosting.
before you go, I would love for you to kind of shill your stuff. So where can we find you online? If you have any social media that you're
I
really
don't have
active
any
on?
social media other than Twitch, which I probably will be streaming the qualifiers on. It's just twitch.tv/Noster.
Do you have a schedule right now?
No, I really don't. I don't stream that much.
Well,
I'm really
A man
working
after
on
my own
trying
heart. I love it.
I'm trying to become like somebody that I would want to watch before I start streaming.
All right. Well, you're obviously good enough. So at least we've got that check. But if you want to follow Noster, if you put your mouse over the screen, you can find his Twitch and you can follow them there. Noster, thank you so much for coming. Any final words to your fans or anyone that you want to talk to and thank?
Not really. Nope.
It was all me. You did it. That was all me. I played the game. I won, right?
Yeah, something like that. All right.
Wonderful. All right, Noster, thank you so much, and you have a great rest of your week. All right, congratulations.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Cool, of course. All right, Bryan. So that's it for us today. Noster is going to be qualifying for the NA Riot qualifiers, and that's a really big deal for some of these big and up and coming players. What's actually really interesting is how so many of them come in and are like, yeah, I don't really stream, and then like 6 months later I see that they have like 2,000 followers, and like, you know what I mean, after moments like this. So this is exactly what a jumping off point is.
Yeah, Twitch can rope you in like that. You find your community, you find your audience, and you get a few people who know, okay, maybe this is someone I should really focus on, really see what they have to offer the game. You get those first eyeballs on you, it starts rolling. So you never know what a win like this can do to springboard your entire association with the game.
And so my last question to you, Bryan, I had such a good time casting with you today. These were actually, I think some of us were prepared for some similar styled games over and over, but these were actually pretty dynamic within their lobbies, right? Yeah, we saw the meta, but how they interacted with each other as players was really interesting. And that was definitely one of my big takeaways here. Loved casting with you, man. Tell me about your day today. Give me your feelings, your wrap up.
I had a great time, Boop. I'm so thankful for the folks with giantslayer for having me on and giving me the chance to cast this game, which I'm very open about the fact I've only really fallen in love with over the past few months, but I have fallen deeply in love with it. And it's great to get to share my experience with your audience, with you, with all the players out there. I hope everyone enjoyed watching, and thank you for welcoming me into this broadcast today.
It was absolutely wonderful having you. You fit right in, my friend. It was an absolute pleasure both to cast with you and to cast for all of you at home watching as well. Noster 11 is going to be our champion today. Ivan Boop, here with Bryan, and we'll see you Thursday for Fight Night Rising right here on this channel. And in a couple weeks, we'll do another qualifier. I'll be back, and we'll see exactly who else is going to be qualifying for these NA World Championships. It's going to be a wonderful time. You actually might see some players that were here today come back to the next one. DQA was here last week. It was here this week. Might have to do the third time run back, get it back that third time, and finally qualify. We shall see. But once again, I've been Boop here with Bryan. For all of the producers, for all of the TOs, for everyone watching today, we'd like to say thank you, and we'll see you next time.